Chapter 1281. When he went downstairs again, Ming found Lily lying on the sofa. Her face was extremely pale. Cold sweat broke out on his forehead, and his lips turned a little purple. Is it really okay not to go to the hospital in this situation? Ming scratched his head, and suddenly felt a little panicked. After thinking about it, he picked up his phone and called 120. Hello, this is Yushio. Lily was a little dizzy from the pain. When she heard that he was calling an ambulance, she almost laughed and shouted, Hey, what are you doing? Ming ignored Lily. After thanking her, he hung up the phone. Lily walked over and reached out to hit him weakly. She said coquettishly, It's just menstrual cramps. Why are you calling an ambulance? That's so pretentious. Shut up and lie down. Ming reached out and wiped the cold sweat off her forehead. Is it that serious? Could it be that he's sick? Is it not menstrual cramps? How can menstrual cramps be so serious? Lily was angry and amused at the same time. She leaned on him and held him weakly. You're the one who is sick. It's normal for women to have menstrual cramps. Ming asked, Really? Yeah. Ming was skeptical. He gently put her down and said, I'll make some brown sugar water for you. Wait for me. I didn't buy brown sugar. Lily's words shattered his fantasy. I don't have the habit of drinking it. Ming didn't like sweets, so he didn't prepare any. Ming was a little angry. He went back and reached out his big hand to gently stroke her belly. He asked, Does it still hurt? It hurts. Lily squinted and leaned against him. But it's better than before. Ming took a deep breath and picked up his phone to call his friend. The call was quickly connected. You don't have to come. I've called an ambulance. Damn, I'm already on the way. Ming hung up the phone and put his big hand on her belly again. Can I rub it? No, she said. Well, there's blood inside. Will it not hurt if I rub it? What kind of nonsense is that? Lily was annoyed and amused at the same time. She said, Your head was bruised when you hit it. Do you think it will go away just by rubbing it? For a moment, Ming was speechless. Seeing that she was obviously in pain, he didn't dare to tease her anymore. He sat quietly by her side and guarded her. Lily squinted her eyes and felt a little drowsy. After a few minutes, the sound of the ambulance could be heard. When Ming called the ambulance just now, he said that a woman was not feeling well and needed an ambulance. However, the nurses and doctors were speechless when they found out that the lady's discomfort was menstrual cramps. But when they saw Lily's condition, they didn't dare delay. When they arrived at the hospital, Ming asked for a separate resting room. After she was hooked up to a drip and laid down for a while, Lily's complexion improved. Lily was in a deep sleep when she suddenly remembered something very important. When she opened her eyes, she saw Ming standing by her side. Her heart warmed and she called out, Ming. Yes. Didn't you say that you were going to serve tea to your parents today? Want to go later? This kind of thing, I said yesterday, I have to do it today. Although I know that Ming's mother has a lot of opinions about me, at least I have to maintain my image. Chapter 1282. But I've already promised your mother. It's not good not to go, right? Lily was a little scared at the thought of Ming's mother making things difficult for her. She was 80%. No, 100% waiting to find fault with me, so that Ming could break up with me. Oh no, it should be called a divorce now. If Ming's mother really did that, then she would be guilty, and she would regret it. When Ming heard that, he laughed and gritted his teeth unhappily. Go back to seek death? Do you want to die on the road or at home? Lily was speechless. What a vicious and mean mouth. Can't you hope for something better? Ming shut his mouth and said, Anyway, I'm not going back. Do whatever you want. If anything happens, I'll take responsibility. Lily pinched him and said with dissatisfaction, You're trying to magnify the conflict between me and your mother. It's okay. I'll talk to her later. I'm fine. Let's go later, Ming. No. Okay. Ming didn't allow her to argue. He tapped her forehead. Don't you understand? I said no means no. Go back and rest well. The doctor said that you have a cold womb, and it's very difficult to treat. You have to find a Chinese medicine practitioner to nurse your body. When Lily heard that, her heart suddenly beat faster. When she saw Ming's expression, she suddenly lost her confidence and asked, "What else did the doctor say?" Ming looked at her deeply and shook his head gently. "Nothing. What do you want him to say?" Lily pursed her lips and shook her head. "Be good and lie down. When you're better, we'll go. Be good." Ming reached out and touched her forehead. It was so cold that it was frightening. "Are you cold?" "No," she said. "Sleep for a while. I'll wake you up when you're ready." "Okay." Lily was indeed not feeling well. She closed her eyes and soon, the sound of even breathing could be heard. Ming saw that she was asleep, so he got up and walked out. He felt a little annoyed and touched his pocket, but it was empty. He had gone out in a hurry and hadn't brought a cigarette. Ming wasn't addicted to cigarettes, but he always carried a box with him. He often left it there for a few days without touching a cigarette. But now, he really wanted a stick to relieve the boredom in his heart. A woman's uterus cannot be underestimated. Not only will it affect the body, but it is also very likely to cause infertility. Looking at your wife's condition, it has not been a day or two. When she feels better, bring her here for a checkup. Why didn't she have this problem before? In the past, you acted as if nothing had happened. It's hard to say. It could be because she stayed up late for a long time, or came into contact with frozen things. It could also be because she had a miscarriage, or she didn't sit well after giving birth. Even abortion. Of course, your wife had a miscarriage. Ming didn't know how to answer, so he gave a vague answer and quickly left. However, in the deepest part of his heart, he felt a dull pain as if something was tugging at it. Sequelae of miscarriage? So, she had been like this for the past 4 to 5 years? When he felt pain, he took painkillers instead of going to the hospital or calling for an ambulance. Moreover, it was very likely to cause infertility. Ming leaned against the door of the ward and let out a heavy sigh. His heart was like a heavy stone, and it hurt. He didn't mind, but what about his mother? She had a strong opinion of Lily. If she knew that Lily might not be able to give birth, then... Chapter 1283. After the drip, Lily had already woken up. But when she got home, she still fell asleep with her eyes closed. It was obvious that she was feeling very uncomfortable. As she fell asleep, Lily got up again. She turned around and saw Ming sitting next to her. She asked, "Have you had breakfast? Go and eat something. What time is it now?" "It's past 11 o'clock. Are you hungry?" Lily shook her head. She didn't feel hungry anymore. "Go to sleep. Call me when you are hungry." Hearing that, Lily nodded, closed her eyes, and quickly fell asleep again. Ming had taken a wedding leave for the past few days, but he had nothing to do with Lily's current condition. So, he asked Su Cheng to send the important documents from the company to the villa and deal with them at home. But before the documents were delivered, he received a call from home. Looking at the time, it was almost 12 o'clock. Ming thought about what to say and then picked up the phone. Xiao Ziqing's voice came quickly with anger and shouted, "Why haven't you come back yet? Didn't you say you would come back today?" Ming was afraid of Xiao Ziqing's reaction, so he didn't dare to call back. After thinking for a moment, he said, "Mom, I am not feeling well today. I forgot to call you." Hearing that, Xiao Ziqing's aggressive tone suddenly softened a lot, and she asked anxiously, "What's wrong? Where do you feel uncomfortable? Does your hand hurt again? Did you go to the hospital?" "Well, I went. It's nothing serious. Now Lily is taking care of me, and I am much better now." Ming lied without blinking. Hearing that, Xiao Ziqing became even more anxious and said, "Oh, where are you now?" "I am at home." "How can that be? Your woman looks like a child." "She is still a child. How can she take care of people?" "Where are you?" "I will go to see you." "No, I have a headache. I'm hanging up." After that, before Xiao Ziqing could speak, Ming directly hung up the phone. Xiao Ziqing looked at the phone anxiously and called Ming again, but he didn't answer. Ming looked at the phone that kept ringing and felt a headache coming on. He couldn't let her come. If she knew that Lily wasn't feeling well and he was taking care of her, his mother would be even more upset. The information was quickly delivered. At about 2 or 3 o'clock, Ming was starving. When he went to the room, he found that Lily was still asleep. He reached out and touched her forehead. Perhaps it was because she was covered with a blanket, but her body felt a little warm. Fortunately, it was no longer cold. You get up and eat. Oming's voice wasn't loud. She immediately opened her eyes and asked, "What time is it?" "Past 2 o'clock. Why don't we go to your mother's place? I feel uneasy." "Have you called your mother?" "Yes, I told her." "It's okay. What do you want to eat?" "I'll have it delivered." Lily was skeptical and asked, "Really?" "Of course, why would I lie to you?" "How about some porridge?" Lily calmed down and nodded. "Well, okay." By the time the meal was delivered, almost an hour had passed. However, there was another unexpected person who came along with the delivery boy. Chapter 1284. Oming's mental state was obviously much better than before. He seemed to be very energetic, and even his complexion and appearance had become a lot better. Xiao Ziqing saw it and heard her son's words. She snorted and said, "If you don't tell me, I can't find it? Do you think I can't find it because you put this house under Lily's name?" Xiao Ziqing actually found a lot of real estate, but this one was bought 2 years ago, and it was only today that it was transferred to Lily's name. In addition, this place was the closest to Oming's best friend. Coupled with what her son said today and yesterday, Xiao Ziqing guessed about 70% to 80%. But when she stopped the car, she saw that the delivery box was from the porridge restaurant that Oming often ordered. So she was even more certain. She followed them to try her luck, and she didn't expect to bet correctly. "What's wrong with you?" She looked like she was fine. She didn't look like she had just come back from the hospital and needed someone to take care of her. Oming's lie was exposed, and he felt a little embarrassed. He coughed lightly and let the person who delivered the porridge go in, record the bill, and sign the bill. When he looked back, Xiao Ziqing had already walked around the villa. "Where's that woman?" Xiao Ziqing walked around. "The room is upstairs, right?" "Mom, wait a minute." But how could Xiao Ziqing listen to him? She had already walked upstairs. Lily was tired from sleeping. After freshening up, she opened the door and heard Xiao Ziqing's voice. Hearing this voice, Lily's heart was in her mouth. For a moment she stopped in place. She didn't know whether to go or go back. Xiao Ziqing came up and saw Lily standing at the door of the master bedroom. Looking at Lily's sickly pale face and her wrinkled clothes, he knew who really needed to be taken care of. Xiao Ziqing frowned and stepped forward. Lily was at a loss for a moment. She called out softly, "Auntie." But after thinking about it, she felt that something was wrong. She and Oming were married. How could she call her auntie? But if she called her mom, would she laugh at her and scold her? Oming quickly caught up. Seeing them in a stalemate, he quickly walked over and said, "Mom, why are you running around? Can't I walk around my son's house?" Xiao Ziqing glared at Oming and said, "Even if you gave it to someone else, I still have the right to do so." Gave it to someone else? What did he mean by that? Lily was a little confused and looked at Oming at the same time. Oming hurried forward, pulled Xiao Ziqing over and said, "Mom, Lily is not feeling well. Let's go down and have some porridge. It just arrived, and it won't taste good when it's cold." "I can't afford it. Why are you drinking porridge at this time? Other than having porridge for breakfast and supper, don't you drink coffee at other times?" Xiao Ziqing was obviously unhappy. She glared at Lily and said sarcastically, "I'm not so lucky to be served by my son." The mockery in his words couldn't be more obvious. Lily didn't say anything. She felt a little uncomfortable. "Mom." Chapter 1285. Oming felt a headache coming on. Just as he was about to say something, Lily said, "I'm sorry, Auntie. I didn't know I was feeling so unwell today. We just came back from the hospital. Did I talk to you? How impudent." Xiao Ziqing was a little angry and shouted, "A person should know their place. Don't you know who you are and how much you are worth? You have no manners at all." Lily felt the pain in her abdomen increase. Her face was not looking too good. She pursed her lips and said, "Auntie, I don't have parents." "But Auntie, when someone is talking to you, you interrupted them without permission. Furthermore, you said that to a junior. Is that considered good manners?" Oming felt a headache coming on. He went up to Lily and pulled her back. Both the old and the young were stubborn. The old one had been spoiled by his father. When he scolded someone, he didn't know how to control his temper. How could he stand such ridicule? As for the young one, she was also difficult to please. If things went south, the two of them might really start fighting. When Xiao Ziqing heard Yu Lily's words, she found it hard to believe. She was so angry that she laughed. Before she could say anything, Oming stepped between them and said, "I'm so hungry. If you continue to quarrel, do you want me to starve to death?" "Junior, look at your attitude now. How are you behaving like a junior? You have no manners at all." Xiao Ziqing was furious. "Do you think that just because my son likes you, you can be our daughter-in-law? Let me tell you, no way. As long as I'm alive, you will never be able to marry into our family." Xiao Ziqing's words were harsh. Yu Lily suddenly had a wicked thought. "Your son and I have already registered our marriage. Go to hell." But she immediately suppressed the thought. Too bad. She opened her mouth but didn't say anything. She looked at Oming. "I'm hungry." Oming looked at them miserably. Both of them were grandmothers. He couldn't afford to offend either of them. Putting on a show was the safest way. After all, Xiao Ziqing was his mother. When she heard him say that, she snorted and turned her back. "Look at you. If you're hungry, eat. Who's stopping you from eating?" After saying that, he crossed his arms and walked down. When Oming saw that, he finally breathed a sigh of relief. He pulled on Yu Lily's hand and softly said, "Let's go down and eat." Yu Lily felt a little aggrieved and asked, "Can your mother still eat when you look at me?" "It doesn't matter. I'm here." Oming pulled her along. "Besides, my mom is full. She eats on time, so she won't go hungry. He must have eaten at this hour." Yu Lily followed him downstairs. When he went downstairs, he found that Xiao Ziqing had already removed the packaging of the porridge. She had gone to the disinfectant cabinet in the kitchen to retrieve 2 sets of bowls and chopsticks. When Yu Lily saw it, her heart ached. 2 sets of cutlery, one for herself and one for Oming, right? The feeling of being ostracized was definitely not a good one. But Yu Lily had no idea what to do now. Enduring the pain in her lower abdomen and back, Yu Lily walked into the kitchen. She helped Oming and herself wash their hands carefully. Then, she took a set of cutlery for herself and walked out. Xiao Ziqing had already cooled the porridge. When she saw Yu Lily take another set of cutlery out, she said unhappily, "Hey, are you looking down on me? Are you planning to do it yourself?" Chapter 1286. Yu Lily was taken aback. She looked at her and asked, "Is that for me?" When Xiao Ziqing saw the look of disbelief on her face, she suddenly felt a little awkward. She turned around and said, "Of course. This is my upbringing. If I'm serving it for my son, there's no reason I can't serve it for you. You're the only one who can measure the heart of a gentleman with your own mean measure." When she said that, Yu Lily's face turned red. "Indeed, I really do seem to be a little mean." Yu Lily put down the bowl and chopsticks and walked up to her. "Thank you. I'm sorry. I misunderstood you just now." Xiao Ziqing sat down at the table and looked at Yu Lily. She pouted and said, "Forget it. The more magnanimous you are, the better your upbringing is. I won't argue with you." Although that was what she said, Yu Lily still didn't feel comfortable saying it out loud. Weren't those words implying that Yu Lily's magnanimity and upbringing were poor? Sitting in the chair, he had originally thought that Oming's mother treated him well, but now, all of a sudden he was gone. Even when she was eating, she felt that it was tasteless. After a few bites, Yu Lily couldn't eat anymore. She put the bowl in front of her and didn't move. "Not to your liking?" Oming looked at her. "Are you still not feeling well? Does it still hurt?" Yu Lily shook her head. "I can't eat anymore. I'm not hungry." "Even if you're not hungry, you should eat more. You haven't eaten all day. How can you not eat?" Oming frowned. "Eat more. If you can't eat anymore, you can have some porridge and water." When Yu Lily heard that, she inadvertently looked up and saw Xiao Ziqing. Her heart was even more perturbed. She couldn't help but think, does Oming's mother think that I'm too delicate? I've never been loved by my parents since I was a child, and now I'm acting like a princess? Or, does she think that I'm doing it to prove how much her son cares about me? The more Yu Lily thought about it, the more unhappy she felt. Fortunately, Xiao Ziqing sat quietly at the side and didn't say anything. It was as if she hadn't heard anything. Lily forced herself to eat 2 more bites. She really couldn't eat anymore and said, "I'm full." "Are you sick?" Xiao Ziqing could not help but ask. "Why are you making it so complicated? If you want to eat, then eat. If you don't want to eat, then don't eat. Why are you asking my son to serve you?" "Mom, don't all women have those days? You're a woman too." She was in so much pain in the morning that she couldn't even straighten her back. "I called an ambulance and sent her to the hospital on a drip. Only then did she feel better," Ming explained. Lily couldn't help but imagine what Xiao Ziqing would say next. She would probably say, "You're so delicate. Who are you putting on a show for?" Or, "Why did you call for an ambulance when you're having your period? You think I never came?" Unexpectedly, Xiao Ziqing said, "It's that serious?" "Has it always been like this?" Lily was a little surprised, but she quickly shook her head and said, "Only in the past few years. Not in the past. TSK, I heard that you haven't been doing too well these past few years. Sure enough, people can't migrate. Once they migrate, they'll have bad luck. Look, with this bad luck, even your body has problems." Sigh. Xiao Ziqing seemed to sigh. But Lily always felt that there was a hidden curse in every word she said. However, after thinking about it carefully, he couldn't come up with anything. What did she mean by those words? Lily couldn't figure it out. She looked at Xiao Ziqing and nodded her head hesitantly. She echoed, "That's true." Chapter 1287. I heard that. Who else would have said that? It had to be Ming. Ming's meaning couldn't be clearer. He probably wanted to use the name of the Shen family to pressure his mother. When Lily heard that, she understood everything. She nodded her head, thought about her words and said, "Granny Shen is very good to me. She wants me to visit her in the capital when I have time." When Xiao Ziqing heard that, she suddenly remembered the scene when old Mrs. Shen had brought Lily to their house. From the looks of it, she was indeed very protective of the little girl. "Although she is a little annoying, her luck is not bad," Xiao Ziqing said to herself. Lily was speechless for a moment. Indeed, nothing good came out of a filthy mouth. "Mom, aren't you going to eat a little? It's quite delicious." Ming changed the topic. Xiao Ziqing looked at him and said angrily, "I'm not eating. If you have nothing to do, go home. Don't stay out all day. Don't let people think that I lost my son in my middle age." Lily was speechless. Ming was speechless. "All right, I'm leaving." Xiao Ziqing stood up and turned to walk out. Ming replied, "Take care." Lily reached out and pointed at his head. Then she walked out and asked, "Did you drive here? Why don't I give you a ride?" "No, I have my own car." In the end, she added, "Is the red Jeep in the yard yours?" Lily was stunned and didn't know how to answer. "Is it mine?" Ming said he gave it to me, but I didn't dare to accept it. Now, she was probably trying to use this as a pretext again, wasn't she? Xiao Ziqing saw Lily's expression and said angrily, "What are you nervous about? If it is, then it is. If it isn't, then it isn't." As she said that, she opened the door and walked away. Lily quickly followed her, and followed her to the car. She watched her drive away before she walked in. As soon as she entered, she saw that Ming was still sitting at the dining table, perfectly fine. Lily went up and said, "How can you treat your mother like this? You didn't even send her off. What if she thinks that you've learned bad things from me?" Ming almost spat out the porridge in his mouth. He laughed and said, "What's there to send? She's not a child. However, I really didn't expect her to ask about the car. I was scared to death just now. If she knew that you bought it for me, I would be scolded by her again." Lily sat on the side, her heart suddenly relaxed, and even her stomach began to feel hungry. After finishing the bowl of porridge, Lily added some more. Ming looked at her and said, "What are you afraid of? She won't eat you up. She can scold you if she wants. She has a sharp tongue, but her heart is not bad. Haven't you noticed? Her attitude toward you is much better than before." I didn't find anything. He was scared to death. So where would he find the time to discover this? After she finished eating, Ming was still eating. Lily had slept enough, and felt much more comfortable. She wandered around the living room in boredom. Walking to the coffee table, Yu Lily suddenly caught a glimpse of a red booklet. The gold words marriage certificate were particularly eye-catching. Yu Lily was shocked when she saw it. She immediately picked it up and opened it. The stamp inside was striking, and the photo was beautiful. Isn't this my marriage certificate with Oming? Chapter 1288. Looking at the marriage certificate, Yu Lily turned to look at Oming nervously and said, "Why did you put the marriage certificate here?" Oming turned his head and glanced at it. Then, without a care in the world, he said, "I look at it when I'm working. I look energetic." But your mother seems to have seen it. What should we do? If she saw it, then she saw it, Oming said. What he wanted was for her to see it. Anyway, it is a fact that we are married. Why should we be afraid of letting others know? Yu Lily was speechless, but she felt a little lucky and asked, "Did your mother see it or not? If she saw it, why didn't she react at all? But if she didn't see it, bah! How could she not see such a conspicuous thing placed here?" Thinking of Qiao Ziqing's softened expression and words, Yu Lily felt a little complicated. Don't think so much. Just let nature take its course. Oming folded the bowl and chopsticks. I'm full. Well, leave it. I'll wash it. You go back to work. Your stomach doesn't hurt anymore? Much better. At least washing the dishes was absolutely no problem. Let me do it. You rest. Puffed. Yu Lily looked at his remaining hand. Washing the dishes with one arm? That's not good, is it? It's a new trend, Oming said. Get lost. Don't take up space. Go back to work. Yu Lily waved her hand in disgust and shouted, "All right." Yu Lily quickly cleaned up the dishes and got some hot water to wash them. When she went out, she saw Oming flying over the keyboard with one hand. He was typing very quickly. When he saw her come out, he waved at her. Come over and take a look. On the computer screen was the face of a middle-aged woman in her 50s. Her skin was dark, and her face was wrinkled. She was smiling at the camera. She was wearing a beautiful dark purple coat, and her short hair was curled into small black curls. What's wrong? Who is this? This is the woman who gave birth to you. Her name is Su Meijian. As Oming spoke, he brought up Su Meijian's information. She's 54 years old this year, and has 2 children. The older one is already over 30 years old, and the younger one is also close to 30. One of her children died more than 20 years ago. She's living a pretty good life now. Yu Lily looked at the completely unfamiliar woman in the photo. After a moment of silence, she asked, "Does she know me?" Yeah, she doesn't really believe that you're still alive. After all that year, her child, who was already a full year old, had not survived. How could this newborn have such a tenacious life force? However, she had survived, and she was living very well. When are we going to find her? When you're better, let's go home. No matter what, I'm a newly married woman. Let's go home and cook a meal for our parents. Then we'll be honest with them. My dad's side is better. When the time comes, as long as we can convince my mom, we'll have a wedding. A wedding? She subconsciously thought of Li Xiqing and Su Qianxi's grand and dreamy wedding in Ireland. The envy in her heart, which had stopped for a long time, overflowed again. But what if we can't convince your mom? No, we definitely can. Oming was full of confidence. When the time comes, we'll tell the world that we're married. Just thinking about it made her feel sweet. Yu Lily slightly raised her lips. Who is the world? Chapter 1289. Yu Lily was caught off guard by his sweet nothings. She turned to look at him and wrinkled her nose. How mushy. Oming chuckled and pulled her to sit down. Let me feel it. Where is it numb? After resting at home for another 2 days, Yu Lily felt a lot more relaxed. On the 3rd day of her period, Yu Lily suggested going to Oming's parents' house. She followed Oming to the hospital to remove the cast before heading over to the O residence. Because she hadn't informed Oming beforehand, Nanny Zhang was a little surprised when she saw him. When she saw Yu Lily behind him, she was even more surprised. She called out, "Madam, young master is back." As she called out, her gaze fell on Oming's hand. Is it better? Oming changed his shoes and walked in. It's almost done. Just don't use too much force. And Nanny Zhang, this woman is my wife. He held Yu Lily in his arms, without the slightest intention of avoiding her. Yu Lily met Nanny Zhang's surprised gaze and felt a little awkward. She called out, "Hello, Nanny Zhang." "Hello, hello, young madam. Come on in. I'll give you a new pair." Nanny Zhang was very quick. She turned around and took out a pair of pink shoes from the shoe cabinet. She had just unwrapped them and brought them to Yu Lily's feet. Yu Lily quickly took them from her and said, "I'll do it myself." "Thank you." Nanny Zhang's smile deepened. She nodded her head. "Sure." Yu Lily put on the shoes and followed Oming inside. It was past 9 a.m. At that time, Xiao Ziqing was usually putting on a face mask and doing some exercise. Otherwise, she would go shopping with her friends at the spa. As for Oh Huijin, he would be in his study or at the office. That was what Yu Lily had learned from Oming. Yu Lily even asked about their hobbies and interests. She was afraid that she would upset them. Indeed, after entering, Oming called out, "Dad, Mom." His voice wasn't soft. Very quickly, there was a response. Steady and gentle footsteps could be heard. Oh Huijin was holding a tablet in his hand. He wore his glasses and didn't even look up from the tablet. He said, "You still know to come back." When he looked up and saw Yu Lily, he smiled amiably. You're here too. Have a seat." "Hello, uncle." Yu Lily greeted obediently. When he heard this, Oh Huijin's smile deepened. But there was a deeper meaning behind it. "Where's Mom?" Oming asked. "Let's go to the yoga room. Go and take a look." Oming nodded his head. He took Yu Lily's hand and led her inside. Yu Lily resisted. She retracted her hand and said, "Would it be inappropriate for me to go in too? Wouldn't that seem very uneducated?" There was an 80% chance that he would be scolded later. Yu Lily was a little worried, but Oming quickly said, "It's fine. My mother should be in the yoga room. Don't you know yoga too? You can exchange pointers." Hearing that, Yu Lily braced herself and followed. However, as soon as he entered, he realized that Xiao Ziqing wasn't practicing yoga. Instead, she was sitting leisurely in the yoga room, watching TV on her phone. Yu Lily immediately recognized the melodramatic family drama that was being aired recently from the TV, as well as the unique voice of the female lead. Chapter 1290. Xiao Ziqing quickly switched off her phone and turned around. She was surprised to see Oming and asked, "You're finally willing to come back? I just arrived. Have you eaten? I was waiting for you." Xiao Ziqing's tone wasn't pleasant. She looked Yu Lily up and down, but didn't say anything. "You haven't eaten yet? We had breakfast and we're about to come here for lunch," Oming said as he held Yu Lily's hand. Oming held Yu Lily's hand. His expression was natural. He didn't seem to think there was anything wrong with what he had said. He continued, "Let Lily and Nanny Zhang cook together." Xiao Ziqing looked at Oming with disdain and snorted. "It's just as so. I can barely eat it. She's still better than you." Oming thought to himself but didn't say it out loud. He held Yu Lily's hand and followed Xiao Ziqing out. "Nanny Zhang, this girl said she wanted to help cook. Why don't you bring her along to buy groceries?" Xiao Ziqing stretched her back leisurely. Nanny Zhang was surprised and asked, "Young madam wants to cook? That's not necessary. I'll do it." "Young madam?" Xiao Ziqing turned her head and looked at her strangely. "Don't call her that. It won't look good if someone thinks too highly of herself." Although those words were directed at Nanny Zhang, Yu Lily's face burned even hotter than Nanny Zhang. Nanny Zhang looked at Yu Lily and hesitated. She didn't know what to say. Noticing that Yu Lily's expression was a little awkward, Oming stood in front of her and said, "Mom, she's my woman. Can't you be more polite when you speak to her?" Xiao Ziqing laughed and looked at Yu Lily meaningfully. "You don't even have this much tolerance. And you still want to be our daughter-in-law? All right. Oh Huijin tried to smooth things over. "Didn't you say you were going to buy groceries? Go on, Oming. Let's play a good game of chess. I haven't seen you father and son play chess in a long time," Oming said. "Let's go to the study." She deliberately brushed past Yu Lily's shoulder as she spoke. She completely ignored Yu Lily. Yu Lily's eyes lit up. "What are you talking about?" When Oh Huijin heard that, he waved his hand and said, "Why are you going? We're father and son talking for a while. You go and buy some groceries. You don't want to get moldy staying at home all day. Go, the three of us will go together." The three women he was referring to were Qiao Ziqing, Yu Lili, and Nanny Zhang. Upon hearing this, Qiao Ziqing naturally knew that he was trying to send her away. She was a little unwilling, but seeing her husband's determined expression, she nodded and said, "Okay, let's go buy groceries together." Auntie Zhang was overwhelmed by the favor. Usually, she was the one who did all these things by herself. Not only did a little girl suddenly come to help, but even the arrogant mistress also went to help buy groceries. However, he did not dare to have any objections, and quickly led them out of the door. Auntie Zhang walked straight out of the door. Qiao Ziqing stopped at the door and asked, "Aren't you driving?" Auntie Zhang turned her head and explained, "The market is only 10 minutes from here. We'll just walk for some exercise. There's no need to drive." 10 minutes? Qiao Ziqing was a little surprised. "It's that close. Why didn't I know? Is it a supermarket or a market?" "A market," Auntie Zhang replied. Qiao Ziqing was even more disgusted. "Isn't that dirty?" Chapter 1291. Is that so? Qiao Ziqing didn't believe her and looked at Nanny Zhang. Nanny Zhang nodded her head. "Yes, madam. If you mind, we can go to the nearby supermarket, but there won't be much variety. We can just pick what's available." "Forget it. It's too restrictive." Qiao Ziqing waved her hand. "Let's go to the market. I haven't been there in a long time." Nanny Zhang felt a little helpless. She looked at Yu Lili and asked, "The smell there might be a little strong. Is that okay?" "Of course. I also like to eat fresh ingredients." Yu Lili smiled. Her attitude was calm and amiable. Nanny Zhang's impression of the young lady improved. She nodded her head and led them to the market. Before they entered, Qiao Ziqing couldn't take it anymore. "It's so noisy. It smells so bad. This is the market. If you're not used to it, you can wait here. Nanny Zhang and I will go in to buy something. We'll come out to fetch you later." Yu Lili tried to make her voice sound as gentle as possible. However, when Qiao Ziqing heard these words, they sounded more like sarcastic remarks. Qiao Ziqing's lips curled up. "If you can go in, why can't I?" With that, she walked in. As if in a fit of pique, she stepped into the market step by step. Qiao Ziqing was wearing a blue coat that looked very expensive, and she was wearing a pair of high heels. Yu Lili was a little shocked. She walked to her side, afraid that she would accidentally fall. But she was also afraid that she would incur Qiao Ziqing's disgust. Yu Lili walked to the side and kept an eye on Qiao Ziqing as she walked. Her movements were very subtle and difficult to detect. Nanny Zhang didn't notice, but Qiao Ziqing did. Qiao Ziqing didn't expose her. Her movements slowed down. Qiao Ziqing had only tagged along to join in the fun. She had no idea which ingredients were fresh and which weren't. Yu Lili had gradually gotten used to the smell of the market. She relaxed and helped Nanny Zhang pick out the ingredients. Nanny Zhang was a little surprised. "Do you come to the market often?" "Yeah. I often cook for myself. I like freshness and variety. As I buy, I learn how to buy." Nanny Zhang understood. "That's great. Your culinary skills must be pretty good, right? We must have a good taste later. Don't you think so, madam? It's just SOSO." Qiao Ziqing turned her head proudly, and her gaze landed on the vegetable stall next to her. Nanny Zhang felt a little helpless. She whispered to Yu Lili, "She's just like that. Her mouth is unforgiving, but her heart isn't bad. You'll get used to it." Yu Lili knew that Nanny Zhang wasn't the only one who had said that. He nodded. "I know." The three of them strolled around for a long time. After some consideration, they decided to make 5 dishes and 1 soup. Just as he was about to head out after buying the ingredients, a man in ragged clothes ran towards him. Qiao Ziqing hadn't been paying attention. When she looked up and saw who it was, she was so frightened that she jumped up. At the same time, she let out a loud roar. Yu Lili had been paying attention to her high heels all the time, afraid that she would drop them. She didn't expect Qiao Ziqing to suddenly act like this. Seeing that she lost her balance and fell to the side, he subconsciously went up to hold her. Chapter 1292. With that, the two of them fell down one after the other, as there was no gravity to support them. Qiao Ziqing sat on the ground, But Yu Lily wasn't so lucky. Not only was her own body weight affected, but the force of gravity that Qiao Ziqing had pulled her down was no joke either. Her whole body fell flat on the ground, and there was a puddle of dirty water on the ground. Many people looked over. When Qiao Ziqing saw that, she exclaimed, "Lily!" She quickly got up and pulled Yu Lily up. Nanny Zhang was also frightened. Who knew that such a thing would happen? But she was still carrying a lot of fresh ingredients that she had just bought, and she couldn't let go of them. Yu Lily looked at Qiao Ziqing, but her eyes weren't on her. Instead, she was looking behind Qiao Ziqing. The person who had just scared Qiao Ziqing was hiding in the crowd and looking over. As if sensing Yu Lily's gaze, he turned around and ran away in fear. This time, Yu Lily could clearly see the person's appearance. He was short, and his clothes were old and tattered. No one was too close to him, and some even avoided him in disgust. He looked like a beggar. Qiao Ziqing pulled Yu Lily up and took a closer look. She saw the obvious black patch in front of Yu Lily and quickly asked, "Are you okay?" Yu Lily shook her head and looked away. When she saw the mess on her body, she laughed at herself and said, "What a bad trip." Qiao Ziqing didn't say anything. When she saw everyone looking at her, she pulled Yu Lily and said, "I was about to fall. Why did you come? Aren't you stupid?" In the end, the two of us fell together. How embarrassing. As he spoke, he immediately pulled Yu Lily toward the exit. Yu Lily turned her head to look at the mess on the ground. The ingredients that she had just picked up were all ruined. What a waste. Qiao Ziqing looked at her with disgust and said, "It's good enough that you can take care of yourself. Why bother with that? Just get Nanny Zhang to buy the ingredients later. Let's go back." Yu Lily turned her head and saw Qiao Ziqing's back. Her eyes darkened, and a phrase that she had heard a lot recently came to her mind. Actually, she was just sharp-tongued. When they got home, Yu Lily asked Qiao Ziqing not to disturb Ming or his father. She asked Qiao Ziqing to take her to Ming's room to take a shower. She found a loose shirt and put it on before coming out to dry her hair. However, she didn't expect to see a pink dress on Ming's bed when she walked out. The thickness was just right for this season. But pink? Ming knew that she didn't like pink. Therefore, this set of clothes shouldn't have been prepared by Ming. Qiao Ziqing was the only one left. Yu Lily's eyes darkened. She went forward and took off the clothes. She drew on the clothes and looked at the brand. It was a very good brand. It was definitely not bought at the last minute. But was Qiao Ziqing going to leave this kind of clothing at home, ready to wear at any time? How could this be? Just as Yu Lily was thinking, there was a knock on the door, and it opened. Qiao Ziqing glanced at it and snorted coldly. "You got lucky. Hurry up and change. We're waiting for you to help in the kitchen." Chapter 1293. After saying that, Qiao Ziqing quickly left. When Yu Lily heard that, she quickly changed her clothes. But the clothes she was wearing were unexpectedly suitable. Could it be that it was originally prepared for Shen Manting? Otherwise, why would Ming's mother suddenly prepare clothes for a young girl? From the looks of it, it couldn't have been prepared for herself, let alone for Yu Lily. Yu Lily racked her brains, and could only think of one possibility. She felt a little sour in her heart, but she still dried her hair, and went to the kitchen. The clothes that Yu Lily was wearing were just right for the occasion. It was a very youthful style. When Nanny Zhang saw Yu Lily dressed like that, her eyes lit up. But she quickly thought of another important point and said, "Why are you still here? You haven't dried your hair yet. You have to take care of yourself first, before you can take care of my young master. Let me get you a hairdryer." "No need. It'll be dry in a while." "Nanny Zhang, let me help you." Qiao Ziqing looked over and said, "Why are you so delicate? You're not the daughter of a big family, and you're not cold. Come and help wash the vegetables." Yu Lily nodded her head and walked over. She immediately took over the hairdryer. Nanny Zhang wanted to say something, but in the end, she didn't and continued cooking. Yu Lily's culinary skills were excellent. Throughout the meal, Nanny Zhang looked at and smelled Yu Lily's dishes. She couldn't stop praising her. As for Qiao Ziqing, she didn't pay much attention to it and didn't say anything. She continued to help in name, but in reality, she was just helping out. When the dishes were placed on the dining table, Xiao Ziqing went to the study to call the father and son out. The father and son weren't playing chess. They were just sitting in front of the chessboard and talking. Xiao Ziqing had expected this and didn't expose them. When they came out, Oming saw Yuli's outfit. He was surprised and asked, "Why did you change?" Nanny Zhang was about to speak when she saw Yuli gently shaking her head. When Oming saw that, he vaguely understood something. He planned to ask her about it later that night. He nodded his head and said, "It looks good." Yuli forced a smile and helped them get their food. Finally, when everyone from the O family had left the table, Yuli sat down beside Oming. Auntie Zhang was also invited to sit at the dining table. It looked very harmonious. Lily's culinary skills are really good. She looks, smells, and tastes great. She cooks even better than I do. Sir and madam, please have a taste, Nanny Zhang said enthusiastically. Oh Huijin chuckled and said, "I smelled it the moment I came out. I thought your culinary skills had improved again, but it turns out the chef has changed." Such a compliment made Yuli a little embarrassed. She said, "Thank you, uncle." "You still call me uncle?" Oh Huijin's expression stiffened, but he did not show any anger. He corrected her, "We are family. How should you address them?" Yuli was shocked and turned to look at Oming. However, Oming was busy eating, as if he hadn't heard Oh Huijin's words. Yuli was at a loss. She reached out and grabbed his thigh. In a low voice she asked, "Did you tell him?" "They're not blind." Oming gently touched the rings on his finger. "Call me daddy." Such a sudden change made Yuli somewhat at a loss. He had thought that it would take a long time, or at least there would be a foreshadowing or something. Chapter 1294. For a moment Yuli's face turned red. Faced with the gazes of everyone around her, Yuli's face grew hotter. She whispered, "Dad." Louder. "Who are you addressing with that soft voice?" Oming's eyes were filled with ridicule, but the depths of his peach blossom eyes were filled with gentleness and endless affection. Yuli was a little embarrassed by his gaze. She reached out and pinched his thigh. Oming avoided it and asked, "Dad, did you hear me?" Oh Huijin could tell that his son was up to no good. He shook his head and laughed. "I didn't hear you." "Louder. What did you call me?" Yuli replied, "Dad." Her voice wasn't soft, but her face was getting redder and redder. As he spoke, he did not forget to glance in Xiao Ziqing's direction. He was afraid that this mother-in-law would suddenly make a sound and mock him. Fortunately, Xiao Ziqing didn't make a sound. She looked at Yuli and seemed to be waiting for something. Yuli didn't know if it was an illusion, but the fear in her heart gradually dissipated. She weakly called out, "Mom." Xiao Ziqing pursed her lips. She didn't know if it was out of disdain or something else. She raised her chopsticks and said, "Let's eat." Oh Huijin chuckled and said, "You." Xiao Ziqing was a little unhappy. She frowned and said, "What about me? Eat your food." Oming reached out his chopsticks and picked some food for Yuli. He whispered into her ear, "Dear, hurry up and eat. I told Dad that I'll be resting at home tonight. I won't be going back." Yuli felt her body go limp. Yuli felt that she was very impressive to be able to stay in the O household, but Oming had actually asked her to stay the night. That was too difficult. What shocked Yuli the most was that Xiao Ziqing had accepted it. She had accepted the way she was addressed without any objection or sarcasm. Did that mean that Oming's mother was slowly beginning to accept her? When Yuli thought of that possibility, she felt a sense of joy rise in her heart. It gradually spread and sublimated. Yuli was still in a daze until the end of the meal. After the meal, Yuli sat at the dining table and waited to help clear the table. When Xiao Ziqing stood up, Yuli felt that she shouldn't be sitting there. She didn't know what to do. Oming noticed her embarrassment and whispered, "What's wrong? Are you stupid?" Yuli looked up at him blankly. Oming chuckled and pulled her into the room. Once she entered the room, Yuli relaxed without the stares of the people around her. "Why didn't you tell me earlier? I thought your parents didn't know. Now that you've done this, what have I become? Doesn't this mean that I'm lying to them?" "You're not the only one, and this was all my idea," Oming said nonchalantly. When Yuli saw Oming's reaction, She became even more annoyed. She yelled, "But that won't do either. I even pretended in front of your mother." Chapter 1295. When Lily heard Ming's words, she let out a sigh of relief. She rolled her eyes and glared at Ming. "You scared me to death." Ming's lips curled up, and the smile in his eyes deepened. In fact, the first half was the truth. However, Ming didn't say anything more. He turned to look at her and said, "My mom likes to practice yoga in the afternoon. Go and play with her. Don't you know how to do it too?" Play with Ming's mother? Lily felt a little strange. She looked at Ming and asked, "Can I? Your mom hates me so much. If I go and play with her in the afternoon, will I get scolded?" That was what Lily was most afraid of, and most worried about at the moment. How could that be? Ming looked at Lily with a deep gaze. He smiled and said in a low voice, "Don't think too much. Scaring yourself is the scariest thing. If you talk to mom nicely, she won't make things difficult for you. Then when I see your mom later, what should I call her? Do I really have to call her mom?" Lily frowned. The thought of Ming's mother scolding her for this made her feel particularly uncomfortable. Hesitantly, she whispered, "Will your mother think that I'm being overly sentimental? What if she scolds me?" Lily asked. "No, my mother isn't as scary as you think." Ming didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "How much psychological trauma did my mother leave in you? Don't be afraid. Just think of my mother as me. In fact, sometimes my words are a little harsh. It's more than just a little harsh. It's very harsh." Lily pouted her lips and muttered. Ming didn't know what to say at that moment. He pinched her face and said, "Go. The yoga room is where I took you just now. Remember not to be too reserved. And don't be too deliberate. My mother just has a bad mouth." With that, he couldn't help but kiss her on the lips and whisper, "My mother is also your mother. In the future, you have to slowly learn to change the way you address her. When you see Dad later, you should also call him Dad. Do you understand?" Lily found it hard to accept. This development seemed a little too fast. When she saw his expression, Lily had no choice but to nod her head and say, "Got it. What are you going to do now?" "I'm going out with Dad. I won't be home in the afternoon. You stay at home with Mom. You have to get along well. If Mom makes things difficult for you, give me a call. I'll be right back." Lily's heart calmed down a little. She nodded her head and said, "I got it. You can go back to your work." "Well, you go first." Ming gave her a gentle push. Lily was a little scared, but she still walked out without looking back. When they arrived at the yoga room, Xiao Ziqing was really doing yoga inside. There was a radio in front of him, playing beautiful music and stories. The volume of the beautiful female voice was just right, and the pace of the story was also very touching. Lily stood in front of the yoga room and gently knocked on the door. "Can I come in?" In front of Xiao Ziqing was a large mirror. There was nothing much in the yoga room, but there were a lot of mirrors. Xiao Ziqing had seen her a long time ago, but when she saw the hesitant look on her face, she did not say anything. Hearing her voice, Xiao Ziqing said nonchalantly, "Come in then." Chapter 1296. When Lily heard Xiao Ziqing's impatient tone, her heart trembled. But soon, he walked in and struck up a conversation. "Are you doing yoga?" Xiao Ziqing glanced at her and asked, "Can't you tell? I'm dancing ballet." Lily was stunned. She never expected to get such an answer. She stared at her with a face full of question marks. Ah, this movement, this posture, this waist, this appearance, it was clearly yoga. Is ballet like this? Xiao Ziqing found it funny when she saw Lily's reaction. She asked, "Did Ming ask you to come here?" Indeed, it was Ming who had called her. But if she admitted it, wouldn't it show that she was insincere? Seeing the look on Lily's face, Xiao Ziqing knew she was right. He rolled his eyes at her and grumbled, "I knew it." When this girl saw him, she was like a mouse that had seen a cat. She couldn't wait to run away, so why would she send herself to his doorstep? Xiao Ziqing decided to ignore her. She listened to the radio and slowly got to work. Lily watched from the side as she did her yoga. After a long time she said, "Thank you for the dress. It suits me very well." although it was very likely that this was originally intended for Shin Manting. But at this time, she still benefited from it, and this thank you should be given. Xiao Ziqing cast a sidelong glance at her and unceremoniously exposed her. Don't try to find something to talk about. If you have nothing to do, let's get up and exercise together. That way, you won't fall the next time you encounter something like this. When Yu Lily heard that, she thought for a moment before taking off her shoes and stepping onto the yoga mat in front of Xiao Ziqing. Kneeling down, the posture was standard. The yoga mat was so big that it took up half of the yoga room. Yu Lily's clothes were relatively loose. It was a sporty outfit. Currently, Xiao Ziqing was performing a classic yoga pose, which was a little difficult. Yu Lily usually did yoga as a hobby. She exercised her body when she was free, so her movements were not very standard. Seeing Xiao Ziqing's reaction, Yu Lily didn't dare to embarrass herself. Xiao Ziqing glanced at her and asked, "What are you doing? Do you have to pray before exercising?" The obvious teasing made Yu Lily blush. She replied, I don't really know how. If you don't know, then learn. Everything has to be learned. Do you think you'll learn it just by being in a daze? Xiao Ziqing's movements were as smooth as flowing water, slow and unhurried. But the curves of her movements were very pleasing to the eye. No wonder Xiao Ziqing's figure was so well maintained. With such a soft waist and such standard movements, it was obvious that she wasn't an amateur. Yu Lily imitated Xiao Ziqing's movements and began to move slowly. However, before Xiao Ziqing could finish her set, she couldn't help but say, "Straighten your chest. Do you have a hump?" Yu Lily's heart skipped a beat. She complained in her heart, but she immediately did as she was told. "Raise your hands high. Can't you lift it because you haven't eaten?" "Yu Lily, are there treasures on the ground? Why are you lowering your head? Raise your chin." "Yu Lily." Xiao Ziqing was a little strict. More importantly, she was very blunt with her words. But for the entire afternoon, she was indeed teaching Yu Lily. Yu Lily practiced for about an hour before Xiao Ziqing stopped. She said, "You're indeed an amateur. All right, come back tomorrow." Tomorrow? Yu Lily's heart skipped a beat. She couldn't help but feel happy. Chapter 1297. As soon as that thought popped up, Yu Lily immediately felt that she was overthinking things. Discarding this thought, Zhang Xian nodded and hurriedly followed behind. Without looking back, Xiao Ziqing walked out of the yoga room and asked, "What do you usually do in the afternoon?" Yu Lily didn't dare to walk too fast or too slowly. She followed closely behind Xiao Ziqing, looking a little uneasy. When she heard the question, Yu Lily thought for a moment before replying, "I'll go to work. I usually go to work half a day." "What about the weekends?" "On the weekends, I'll draw at home." "Painting?" Xiao Ziqing looked a little surprised. Then a look of realization dawned on her face. "Oh yes, you draw comics, right?" How can you stay at home all day? You don't know how to do yoga. And you don't even exercise on the weekends. What's the difference between you and a salted fish?" Xiao Ziqing had a look of disdain on her face as she walked out and headed to the changing room to change her clothes. Yu Lily was a little embarrassed and tried to defend herself. "Actually, I go out for a jog every morning." "Oh," Xiao Ziqing replied and didn't say anything else. Yu Lily was a little embarrassed and didn't know what to say. Xiao Ziqing walked into the changing room. She glanced at Yu Lily and said, "Go get changed. Let's go out for a walk." Yu Lily was stunned, and her heartbeat suddenly accelerated. "Shall we go for a walk together? With Xiao Ziqing alone?" "What are you waiting for? If you don't want to go, I'll wait for you." Xiao Ziqing frowned and waved her hand. Yu Lily quickly nodded. "I'll go right away. Wait for me." Just as she turned around, she suddenly remembered. "I didn't bring any clothes with me." Xiao Ziqing turned her head and gave Yu Lily a strange look. "Didn't you go into the walk-in closet?" His words made Yu Lily blink. Then she turned around and went back to her room. Her room was naturally Oming's room. She really didn't come into the cloakroom. She just went through the wardrobe at the door and took out one of Oming's clothes to wear. The walk-in closet was next to the bathroom. Yu Lily turned around and saw Oming's closet. When he opened them, he saw that they were all men's clothes. There was a wardrobe inside the men's wardrobe. Yu Lily opened it and saw a dazzling array of clothes hanging there. There were many colors, but most of them were red. She looked at the measurements and found that they were all her measurements. Not many, but at least 7 or 8. This was prepared by Oming? She originally thought that the pink dress she was wearing had been prepared by Qiao Ziqing for Shin Manting. Now that she thought about it, Shin Manting was a northerner and was much taller than her, so it couldn't be that. The resistance deep in Yu Lily's heart suddenly disappeared. After he changed his clothes, he opened the door and saw Qiao Ziqing coming out of the room at the same time. Qiao Ziqing glanced at the red dress she was wearing. It was hard to tell whether it was a compliment or a sarcasm. She muttered softly, "It looks pretty good." Yu Lily touched her head, lowered her head, and did not speak. "Let's go." Qiao Ziqing put on her handbag and looked like a rich lady. She said, "I asked a few friends to have tea together. I heard that my son brought a woman back, so I wanted to meet you. Don't embarrass me." Hearing that, Yu Lily's heart skipped a beat. Is she going to bring me to meet someone? Chapter 1298. When Yu Lily thought about that, she felt that she was overthinking things. Maybe Oming's mother was just bored, so she took me out to see the world? But at that moment, Yu Lily didn't dare to say anything else. She followed them into the garage. "Do you know how to drive?" Qiao Ziqing suddenly asked. Yu Lily immediately replied, "Yes." "Well, you drive." After Qiao Ziqing unlocked the car door, she threw the key to Yu Lily and sat in the front passenger seat. Yu Lily couldn't figure out what this woman was trying to do. It was said that a woman's heart was like a needle at the bottom of the sea. Yu Lily finally understood the true meaning of that sentence. Yu Lily didn't dare to delay any further. She drove to a high-class leisure place that Qiao Ziqing had designated. She parked the car and followed Qiao Ziqing upstairs. When they entered the private room, there were 2 or 3 rich women in good shape. Even their skin looked very good. From their appearance, they didn't look much different from Qiao Ziqing. If Yu Lily didn't know their real age, she would probably think that they were in their 30s. "You're here. Hey, who is this girl?" One of the rich women was a little surprised. "Why did you bring a girl today?" Qiao Ziqing didn't answer. She turned around and sat down in front of them. The waiter served tea. Qiao Ziqing slowly took a sip and introduced her to Yu Lily. "This is Li Pingting, my good friend." She was the rich woman who had just spoken to Qiao Ziqing. Yu Lily nodded and smiled politely. "Hello, Auntie Li. This is also my good friend Qiao Meng." "Hello, Auntie Qiao." Yu Lily greeted politely. "I am Zhuang Yinhua." Another woman introduced herself and looked at Yu Lily with a smile. "You must be Ziqing's daughter-in-law. You're pretty good to be able to deal with Oming." Daughter-in-law. Those 3 words made Yu Lily feel a little guilty. She smiled awkwardly and subconsciously looked at Qiao Ziqing. Qiao Ziqing put down the teacup and said, "She's afraid of strangers. By the way, Yinmeng, is your daughter's wedding day coming soon?" Yu Lily knew that this was a change of topic. She quietly breathed a sigh of relief. Zhuang Yinhua quickly started chatting with Qiao Ziqing. The girls sat together drinking tea and chatting. The laughter grew louder and louder, and no one paid any attention to Yu Lily. The sisters were bored, so they set up a table to play mahjong. Yu Lily would occasionally help pour tea. She was very quiet. However, from the beginning to the end, Qiao Ziqing did not introduce them to the girl she had brought with her. Li Pingting was a short-tempered person. Her original patience was almost worn out. Finally, she shouted, "Ziqing, why isn't your daughter-in-law saying anything? What's her name?" Li Pingting wasn't the only one who felt that way. Even the other 2 sisters felt that Yu Lily was too low-key. Hearing the word daughter-in-law again made Yu Lily even more embarrassed. Was she now Mother O's daughter-in-law? Qiao Ziqing probably wouldn't admit it. Unexpectedly, Qiao Ziqing only gave Yu Lily a sidelong glance and leisurely said, "Who knows? Maybe she's looking down on you, Dongfeng." A mahjong tile hit, and Yu Lily's heart was also shocked, and then it was full of waves. Chapter 1299. Yu Lily looked at Qiao Ziqing with her eyes wide open in disbelief. Qiao Ziqing didn't look at her. She continued to chat with her friends and play cards. Yu Lily was a little happy, but she quickly waved her hands and explained, "No, how could I be like that?" "Then why didn't you say anything? You've been here for so long, and I don't even know what your name is," Qiao Ming said. "My name is Yu Lily Auntie Qiao." "Ah, Yu Lily, why does this name sound so familiar? No wonder you look so familiar. You're the mistress who caused a ruckus with Oming some time ago, right?" Zhuang Yinhua's words were not at all tactful. It was so straightforward that it made Yu Lily feel a little awkward. "How can you say that?" Li Pingting pushed Zhuang Yinhua and rebuked her. But it was obvious that they already knew who Yu Lily was. "She's not a mistress now. Since she's been brought here, she must be married to Oming," Qiao Ming said. "But why haven't I heard any news? Is it a secret marriage?" Yu Lily had expected to see contempt, disdain, or something else on their faces. But it seemed that Yu Lily was gauging the heart of a gentleman with her own mean measure. These women, who were obviously about the same age as Qiao Ziqing, were just gossiping on the side. They had no intention of targeting her. Just as Yu Lily was about to answer, she was interrupted. "I guess so. Young people nowadays like to play this game. To put it nicely, it's low-key, but in fact they love to cause trouble. Who doesn't get married at some point? Why do they have to settle everything before they have a wedding? Hey, what's your name? Yu Lily, is it? Was it Oming's idea for you to do this?" Zhuang Yinhua looked as if she had seen through everything. She clicked her tongue and shook her head. "It's not that I want to say this, but Oming, that rascal, has been especially good at causing trouble since he was young. His parents were so angry. I used to want to marry my daughter to that rascal. Ha ha ha. Later, I was frightened by that rascal, so I gave up on that idea." "That's right," Qiao Ming chimed in. "It's not that other girls don't like Oming, but no one can stand his temper. You're really something. You're able to stand his temper. It's true love." It could be seen that these aunties had known Qiao Ziqing for a long time. Their relationship was so good that everyone just laughed it off. Hearing that, Yu Lily tried to recall what Oming looked like. Thinking of Oming's unbearable temper and poisonous mouth, she smiled and said, "I've known Oming for many years. I met him when I was 17. After that, we separated for a period of time." She looked at them and said, "Later I went to Beijing. Something happened, and Oming brought me back." It was a simple sentence, but there was an indescribable sorrow in it. Fortunately, she did not succeed in dying. Otherwise, this day wouldn't have come. Only after surviving the rain could one see the rainbow. No matter what, Old O's son finally has someone who wants him. Zhuang Yinhua waved her hand and said, "Come on, let's play cards together. Get your mother to step aside." Chapter 1300. Huh. Yu Lily was suddenly called. She looked at Zhuang Yinhua and stammered, You do it. I don't want to fight anymore. These old women have bad luck, and always say that I'm bullying them. Let them see what good luck is." Qiao Ziqing stood up, pulled Yu Lily down, and pressed her down. "You do it." Seeing Yu Lily's confused expression, she asked, "Why are you standing there? Don't you know how to play?" Yu Lily thought for a moment and said, "I think so. If you do, then so be it. If you don't, then so be it." "What do you mean by probably?" Qiao Ziqing asked from behind. Yu Lily thought about it again and asked, "Do I want to win or lose?" Her voice was very soft as she turned to look at Qiao Ziqing. Yu Lily's eyes were deep and dark brown. When Qiao Ziqing saw her eyes, her beautiful and exquisite eyebrows rose slightly. In a loud voice she said, "Kill them all." Hearing Qiao Ziqing's words, the women behind her were in an uproar. With a look of disdain they mocked, "Can you do it? Don't brag. Just because your luck is good doesn't mean your daughter-in-law's luck is good. Your daughter-in-law is so young. I don't think she knows how to play. When we win all your money later, don't say that we bullied the young." Being provoked, Qiao Ziqing became even more excited. She gently pushed Yu Lily and said, "Did you hear that? Don't embarrass me. You have to beat them." "Okay." With the heavy burden on her shoulders, Yu Lily immediately perked up. Looking at the cards in front of her, Yu Lily looked at them and played a seemingly useless 3 dice. "Draw," someone shouted. With that draw, the rest of her luck seemed to be running away. Every time Yu Lily played a card, She was either knocked or hit. This round was a terrible loss. You want to beat us like that? Ha ha ha. Ziqing, you're bragging too much. Xiao Ziqing glanced at them and said nonchalantly, this is just the beginning. What's the rush? Yulili was a little embarrassed. She turned to look at Xiao Ziqing and said, why don't you do it? Continue. Xiao Ziqing sat down at the spot where Yulili had been sitting. Yulili had to bite the bullet and continue playing. In the next 2 or 3 games, Yulili lost miserably. The most terrifying round was in the 3rd round, when the cannon fired 3 times. The other 3 families were all laughing happily, but they didn't forget to provoke Xiao Ziqing, saying, aren't you talking big? It seems like your daughter-in-law really doesn't know anything. Why don't you do it yourself? Don't lose too badly. Xiao Ziqing, who was drinking her coffee, pouted her lips and said in disdain, you guys are just lucky. The 3 women burst into laughter and said, this time, you can draw the cards first. Don't say that we, as your elders, are bullying you. Yulili was also a little embarrassed. Losing money was not a big deal, but losing face was a big deal. He nodded and said, thank you, Auntie. The 3 women laughed even more happily, but soon they couldn't laugh anymore. In the 4th round, Yulili was in a daze. Everyone was stunned and couldn't believe it. Impossible. Her luck is too good. It was also the first time that Yulili had caught a daze. Her heart was bursting with joy. Just as she was about to say a few humble words, she heard Xiao Ziqing say, it's all because you guys went easy on me. Look, isn't this luck? Chapter 1301. Following that, Yulili's luck seemed to have turned on, and she couldn't stop winning. In the end, the women lost so much that they lost all their energy. Xiaoming pushed the cards back and shouted, I'm not playing anymore. I'm not playing anymore. Looks like we can't give away our good luck. Look, if we give away our good luck, we won't be lucky anymore. Yulili was embarrassed to lose and embarrassed to win. When she heard that, she said, I was just lucky. Your skills are still better. What skills? It's just a matter of luck. Forget it. It's too late now. I'll go home and pretend to make dinner. You guys have fun. Zhuang Yinhua was the first to bid farewell. Following that, the others also left one after another. Xiao Ziqing sighed and said, every time I lose, I blame it on my luck. It's obvious that I'm not as good as others. Shut up. Don't speak. Get lost. His words drew the wrath of the crowd. Yulili couldn't help but laugh. Xiao Ziqing said proudly, let's fight again next time. We'll be going back too. Goodbye. Yulili quickly followed Xiao Ziqing out of the parking lot. Halfway there, Yulili remembered that she had forgotten to take the car keys. She must have left them upstairs. But Xiao Ziqing was already walking further and further away in her high heels. Yulili wanted to call out to her, but she couldn't. What's it called? Auntie? Mom. Yulili quickened her pace to catch up with him and shouted, that. However, Xiao Ziqing did not stop and continued walking forward. Yulili shouted again, that? Auntie, I forgot my car keys. The voice was crisp and clear, echoing in the empty parking lot. However, Xiao Ziqing didn't stop walking, as if she hadn't heard anything. Yulili was sure that her voice wasn't low. How could she not have heard it? Could it be that Oming's mother couldn't recognize his voice? At that thought, Yulili felt a little stifled. She chased after him and called out again, that. Xiao Ziqing suddenly stopped in her tracks. She turned her head to look at Yulili and asked, who were you talking to along the way? Yulili was taken aback for a moment before replying, with you. Follow me? Are you sure? Xiao Ziqing looked a little angry. Yulili was a little confused. She didn't know how she had provoked this female overlord. Xiao Ziqing was annoyed and asked, what did you call me? Yulili was even more stunned. She whispered tentatively, Mom, what? Xiao Ziqing was a little impatient. Speak louder. His tone was a little fierce, but Yulili was suddenly happy. She smiled and said, the car key is upstairs. I forgot to take it. Xiao Ziqing snorted. By the time you get it, the sun will be up. As she spoke, she threw a bunch of keys at him. Let's go. Yulili took the key, and it was indeed that key. Xiao Ziqing turned around and walked away. Her back view was straight and beautiful, arrogant and unapproachable. However, Yu Lily's heart suddenly felt like it was about to fly, and she was filled with excitement that couldn't be contained. Looking at Xiao Ziqing's back, Yu Lily shouted happily, "She's coming!" Most of the time, a person's mood was just because of a small matter. But to Yu Lily, this small matter was no small matter. After cooking and eating, Yu Lily helped Nanny Zhang with the laundry and couldn't wait to return to her room. Chapter 1302. Ming was a little confused by her sudden embrace. It was rare to see Yu Lily in such a good mood. Ming's mood improved as well, and his lips curled into a smile. Hugging the little woman in his arms, he asked softly, "What's wrong? Why are you so happy?" When Yu Lily heard the man's voice, she felt so happy that she could fly. She hugged Ming tighter and jumped excitedly. "Ming, let's go buy a lottery ticket. We'll definitely hit the jackpot today." Ming's smile deepened. He loosened his grip and asked, "What's wrong?" Yu Lily's smile was as bright as a flower. It was so gorgeous that no one could take their eyes off her. "Mom brought me to meet her friend today." When Ming heard this, his smile deepened. His pair of bright peach blossom eyes were filled with love, like sugar and honey, so thick that it could not melt. So fast. How did it feel? It was a little awkward at first, but later, I played mahjong with a few aunties and helped Mom win many rounds. Yu Lily said it like she was presenting a treasure. Her tone was coquettishly asking for praise, and it was full of pride. Ming could clearly sense that when Yu Lily called Xiao Ziqing, her tone was no longer as repulsive as before. Just this afternoon, he was still addressing her as his mother. But now, he was directly addressing her as his mother. Such a small change was a good start. Ming rubbed her hair and said with a smile, "Mom is in a good mood today. It's only the first day. It's great." Yu Lily's heart was filled with pride. She hugged Ming's waist and said coquettishly, "It's not even 8 o'clock. Let's go watch a movie, shall we? You're in such a good mood." Ming's smile deepened. He nodded and patted her butt. "All right, let's go." "Yeah." Yu Lily let go of him and entered the room. When Ming saw how happy she was, his smile faded a little. They were newlyweds, and Xiao Ziqing had accepted Yu Lily. But if she knew that Yu Lily was likely to be infertile, would she? She was a hidden danger. This matter was like a stone stuck in Ming's heart. He couldn't let it go. He had to find a time to take Yu Lily for a checkup. Yi Yu had been lying in the hospital for several days. As expected, Shun Luo hadn't appeared since the second day she was hospitalized. There wasn't even a phone call. There is nothing more sorrowful than a dead heart. Yi Qianqian stayed by Yi Yu's side every day. Occasionally, she would go out to take a look. However, she spent most of her time in the hospital. Yi Qianqian was sitting next to him, reading a comic. She looked disinterested. Looking at Yi Qianqian's bored expression, Yi Yu felt a little guilty and called out, "Sister." Yi Qianqian suddenly looked up. Her first reaction was to ask, "Huh? Do you want some water?" Yi Yu shook her head. "Go back to work. I'll be discharged in a few days. It's not particularly serious." Yi Qianqian couldn't react for a moment. Before she could think of an answer, she was interrupted by a male voice. Chapter 1303. He turned his head and saw a tall figure standing at the door. Li Jinnan looked at the two women inside and slowly walked in. His eyes, as cold as the winter night, landed on Yi Yu. Yi Yu didn't expect him to suddenly appear. When she heard that, she immediately retorted, "I'm not a popular star. They won't be so free to pay attention to my trivial matters." Li Jinnan's eyes were calm as he slowly looked away and said, "You're not important, but the Lonely Swordsman is very popular now. The replacement Su Yingying has been very popular lately. You're the original supporting actress, and the focus is always on you. If word gets out that you're discriminating against one and favoring the other, how do you think it will affect the company?" "I wanted to be discharged myself. What does it have to do with the company?" Yi Yu looked at Li Jinnan with dissatisfaction and said, "Although you're my boss, you can't be so overbearing and dictate my affairs, can you? I know my own body best. I want to be discharged. GM Li, this way." I can save you a lot of medical expenses. Li Jinnan's eyes turned slightly. His gaze was as calm as the moon, and he looked at her coldly. His voice was slow and firm, and he didn't allow for any disagreement. The company doesn't lack medical expenses. With that, he turned and walked away. GM Li! Yi shouted. Li Jinnan didn't stop walking. GM Li, wait a minute. The figure had already left the ward, and didn't stay for a moment. Yi was even more annoyed. She screamed, Li Jinnan. There was no response. Yi was furious. She stared at the door and bit her lower lip. Yu, I think your boss is right. No matter what, you have to get better first. You're already suffering from an injury. If your health isn't good, how are you going to act in the future? How are you going to win back your position? Yi Qianqian said angrily. Yi didn't reply, but the grievance in her heart was magnified. Accident. Injury. It wasn't easy to get the role, and she had to give it up just like that. The 2 episodes that had been filmed had to be cut out and replaced with Su Yingying's scenes. The Lonely Swordsman was adapted from a very popular novel. It had a huge readership, and the advertising was very strong. She had originally gotten the role of the second female lead because she had a bright personality and a positive image. Many new starlets were fighting over her. There were even quite a few veterans in the circle who wanted this role. She was well aware of the reason why she had fallen into her hands. It was that strange night where she lost her chastity in exchange for a bright future. If word of this got out, it would be the unspoken rule that everyone talked about. She knew that very well, but what was done was done. There was no point in regretting it. If everything went well, it was very likely that she would officially increase her value and appear in the eyes of the public. But it was ruined, completely ruined. This fall had cut off all her chances. There would only be one such opportunity. Could it be that she had to go to the unspoken rules again in exchange for such an opportunity? Yi pursed her lips. Her eyes were burning. She turned her head away and closed her eyes. In a low voice she said, Sis, I'm hungry. Help me buy some food. Yi Qianqian shut her mouth in embarrassment and said, All right. Give me a moment. Chapter 1304. This man looked very young, very tall, very strong, and very well proportioned and handsome. She was carrying a fruit basket and a bunch of beautiful flowers. At first glance, he was bright and seemed to be about 25 or 26 years old. Who else could it be but Shenjilia? She looked at him in disbelief. Shenjilia. Anyone would be surprised to see Shenjilia in such a place at such a time. Shenjilia saw Yi from afar. He raised his hand in greeting. Hi. Why are you here? I'm here to see my sister-in-law, Shenjilia said with a bright smile. She's in this ward, right? Yes. Yi Qianqian glanced behind him. Shen Luoan didn't come? Speaking of Shen Luoan, Shenjilia felt a little guilty. At the end of the day, Shen Luoan was still Yi's husband. During this period of time, Shen Luoan had been staying at home to take care of Shen Manting. It was as if Shen Manting was his official wife. Shenjilia coughed lightly and said, My brother has been quite busy recently. He can't leave the hospital, so he didn't come over. Now that I'm free, I'm here on behalf of my brother. Yi Qianqian sneered when she heard that. Come here on behalf of your brother? You don't even take care of your own wife, so you send your younger brother to go through the motions. You're really a competent younger brother. Your older brother must be very happy, right? Shenjilia was rendered speechless. He felt a little aggrieved and said, I don't know either. I'm the younger brother, so I have to listen to whatever he says. I just sent Grandma back to the capital and rushed all the way here. Why are you scolding me? Can't we play properly? Yi Qianqian also knew that she had gone overboard by venting her anger on him. She pouted and reached out to take the fruit basket from his hand. Have you eaten? Not yet. I just got off the plane and came over. You didn't even eat your in-flight meals. Oh please, is in-flight food for humans? Shenjilia felt even more aggrieved. Have you eaten already? No. Go in, I'll go buy some food. Okay, then I want 3 slices of eggplant mushu pork, and you don't have to be picky. If you don't want to eat, then don't. Yi Qianqian carried the fruit basket into the house and rejected him without any hesitation. She turned around and left the house. Shen Jiliya chuckled and turned to look at Yi Yuyu, who was lying on the hospital bed. He called out, "Sister-in-law." When Yi Yuyu heard the way he addressed her, her lips curled into a self-deprecating smile. She looked at the young man in front of her, who looked a little like Shen Luoan, and said, "Brother-in-law, are you feeling better? Recently, I accompanied Grandma on a trip. I just sent Grandma back. It's all right. Thank you for coming to see me." Yi Yuyu smiled, but the smile looked forced no matter how you looked at it. Shen Jilia's heart ached when he saw Yi Yuyu's pale and listless face. Shen Jilia walked over and sat down on the stool beside her bed. He sighed and said, "Sister-in-law, I'm sorry." The sudden apology made Yi Yuyu turn her head away. She didn't understand what was going on. "Our Shen family owes you too much. Sister-in-law, I'm sorry." Yi Yuyu's eyes dimmed, and her smile faded. "Recently, my brother has been quite busy, so he didn't have time to visit you. However, he specifically told me to see how you're doing, and when he's done with his work, he'll come visit you." Chapter 1305. Shen Jilia nodded his head. Yes. Shen Luoan's exact words were, "Check if she's dead for me." The last sentence was added by himself. But seeing that Yi Yuyu's mood had obviously improved, it was worth it. So no matter what, health is the top priority. You must take good care of yourself. When my brother is done with his work, you have to look better. Look at your face. TSK. It's like you've applied a layer of powder. It's pale and green. You look so haggard. Shen Jilia looked at her face and shook his head. You look much uglier than before. Yi Yuyu instinctively touched her face. She finally felt a sense of crisis. Really? Why don't you take a look for yourself? Shen Jilia took out his phone and turned on the front camera. He aimed it at her face and asked, "Is that right?" Yi Yuyu looked at herself in the mirror. The first thing she saw were the dark circles under her eyes, the bags under her eyes, the pale complexion, and the messy hair. During this period of time, she hadn't taken care of herself properly. Firstly, she wasn't in the mood. Secondly, it wasn't convenient. Yi Yuyu had never imagined that things would turn out this way. As she touched her face, Yi Yuyu's emotions became complicated. A week ago, it was still bright and beautiful. Now in just a few days, it had become like this. How tragic. Yi Yuyu felt a little stifled. She handed the phone back without a word. With one look, Shen Jilia could tell that she had taken his advice to heart. He quickly changed the topic and told her a lot of interesting things. However, Yi Yuyu had always been disinterested. When Yi Qianqian returned from buying food, she could feel the awkwardness in the air. Yi Qianqian had bought a lot of food because of the extra man. There was a lot of meat and seafood on the table. As soon as they were placed on the table, Shen Jilia cheered them on. He opened the lunchboxes and began to eat heartily. Yi Qianqian unceremoniously smacked him with her chopsticks. "Have you washed your hands? Besides, this is for my sister. How dare you snatch food from a patient?" Shen Jilia shrank back from the slap. He quickly replied, "I've showered. I'll peel the prawns for you, don't move." "I don't believe you. You must be trying to steal it. Am I that kind of person?" "Yes. You misunderstood." Hee. Shen Jilia was speechless. The exchange of words was boring, but Yi Yuyu found it interesting. After the meal, Yi Yuyu's mood improved significantly. By the time she sent Shen Jilia off, it was already past 9 in the evening. Yi Yuyu fell into a deep sleep. Yi Qianqian led Shen Jilia to the hotel where she was staying to get a room. After that, they went their separate ways. After Shen Jilia finished his shower, he couldn't calm down for a long time. After much consideration, she decided to call Shen Luoan. The call was quickly connected. It seemed to be a little noisy on Shen Luoan's side. There was the sound of moving music, lively chatter, and the coquettish voice of a woman. When Shen Jilia heard the noise, he could roughly guess where that place was. After a moment of silence, she called out, "Brother." However, it wasn't Shen Luoan's voice that appeared. It was Shen Manting. "Jilia, brother is drunk. I'm in the bar. Can you come and help me? I can't carry him alone." Shen Jilia frowned. "I'm in H City. Are you going to have a drink with him?" No, I was told to come here by the waiter. I didn't dare to tell my parents, so I came here secretly. Dash. Chapter 1306. Shin Manting was also helpless. She looked at Shin Luoan, who was as drunk as a dead fish. Julia, see if there is a waiter nearby. Ask the waiter to help you. Shin Julia's voice was calm, but Shin Manting was even more flustered at this moment. She said, Julia, I'm a little scared. What if I'm recognized? Hearing this, Shin Julia had a strange feeling in his heart. She's actually afraid of being recognized? What's there to be recognized? Is she afraid of being recognized as Shin Manting? Or was it that she was afraid of being recognized as the female lead of the rumor that had been spreading recently? Or is she afraid of being recognized as the heroine of the scandal? Recently, because of Yi Yu's injury, Shin Manting and Shin Luoan's relationship was also dug up and talked about. It was a hot topic on Weibo. Some people said that Yi Yu made a mistake during the filming because her husband cheated on his sister-in-law. This Weibo was very popular. Many people were scolding Shin Manting, and many people said, "You'd better not let me see you, or you won't be able to return." Shin Manting was probably afraid of this. After thinking about it, Shin Julia comforted her. Don't be afraid. Those keyboard warriors are nothing without their keyboards. Cover your face, and ask someone to help send me back. But Grandma is at home. If she finds out that we are drunk, I'm afraid. Shin Manting was also in trouble in the Shin family recently. Old Mrs. Shun's attitude toward her was getting colder and colder. She even scolded her recently. Shin Manting was suffering in her heart. She just needed to stay away from old Mrs. Shun. But if she took Shin Luoan home like this, old Mrs. Shun couldn't not know, and there would be a great disaster. Take me to the hotel first. Let's hide for the night. This was the only way. Shin Manting thought so too. She looked around and saw that there were many men and women coming and going. There were not many people paying attention to this side. Shin Manting tried to lift Shin Luoan and whispered, "Brother, wake up. It's time to go home." Shin Luoan didn't move, but in a drunken state, he reached out and put his hand on her. He should be able to hear her. Shin Manting exhaled softly and pulled up her turtleneck sweater to cover most of her face. She squatted down, lifted his arm, and wrapped it around her neck. She used all her strength to pull him to his feet. Shin Luoan looked drunk, but he was still conscious. He reached out to hold her shoulders and rested his head on her neck. His breaths were filled with the strong smell of alcohol. His mouth was mumbling something, but it was hard to hear what he was saying. Shin Manting held him in her arms and dragged him away. She whispered, "Can you still walk? Be careful. Don't crush me. You're too heavy." Shin Luoan lifted his body slightly, and his footsteps followed Shin Manting's. Although it wasn't very stable, it was still much easier than before. Shin Manting kept her head down throughout the journey. Shin Manting hailed a cab and carried him in after they found a hotel. When Shin Luoan entered the room, he seemed to have sobered up. He muttered, "Take a shower." Shin Manting was infuriated by him and threw him onto the bed. She took off her coat and scolded him. "You're drunk and you still want to take a bath? Don't die in the bathroom." Chapter 1307. Suddenly, Shin Luoan laughed and waved at her. He said gently, "Come here." Shin Manting was a little afraid to go over, but when she saw his smile, she still walked over. Shin Luoan was a little annoyed. He simply reached out and pulled her over, holding her in his arms. Shin Manting subconsciously resisted. She struggled to break free from his restraint with both hands and shouted, "Shin Luoan, please be more respectful." Hearing that, Shin Luoan seemed to loosen his grip, and his breathing suddenly became a little rapid. Shin Luoan fell back softly. He squinted his eyes and fell on the bed, smiling bitterly. However, he did not let go of Shin Manting's hand. He gently pulled and said again, "Come here." Shin Manting had never seen Shin Luoan like this. Desolate and lonely, as if he was fragile and vulnerable. This Shin Luoan was completely different from the Shin Luoan, and who was usually superior and insufferably arrogant. Shin Manting felt a little sympathy from the bottom of her heart. The feeling of disgust she should have felt at this moment seemed to be defeated by his loneliness and fragility, and completely disappeared without a trace. Shin Manting stepped forward and gently held his hand. She leaned over and touched his face. His handsome face had been burned red by the alcohol, and it was very hot. Shin Manting looked at the man in front of her, and gently lay down beside him. Her beautiful eyes stared at him. This was her first man, and also her elder brother. Originally, there should be nothing between him and her. He was already married, and he had a childhood sweetheart. She was supposed to be married to another man, but everything changed. From the beginning of his invasion, from the day she committed suicide, her life and his life began to be different. Shen Luo, and seemed to feel a warmth approaching in front of him. He leaned forward and opened his squinted eyes. He turned his body, and easily pressed his body against hers. Shin Manting was caught off guard and screamed. Looking at the flushed face in front of her, her heart could not help but beat faster. Indescribable throbbing spread layer by layer. Shen Luo, and held her palm with one hand, and rested his other hand on the side of her body. He lowered his head slightly, and kissed her lips softly and tenderly. There was an indescribable electric current flowing through her smooth and tender lips that reeked of alcohol. Shin Manting couldn't tell what she was feeling, but it was a little uncomfortable and comfortable at the same time. She was so happy that she was infatuated with it. This was something she had never experienced when facing Oming. This was something she had never experienced in front of Shen Luoan. Shen Luoan closed his eyes and kissed her gently. His lips moved down slowly, and his Adam's apple bobbed as he whispered a name. Yu. Shin Manting felt as if something in her heart had shattered in an instant. She was caught off guard by the sound of a clang. The feeling of weightlessness in his heart was so empty that it almost suffocated him. Her lips, which reeked of alcohol, continued to move, but she was no longer as intoxicated as before. An indescribable discomfort instantly filled his heart. She raised her hand and pushed him away forcefully. A warm current overflowed from the bottom of her heart to her eyes. Even Shin Manting herself couldn't tell why, and her throat was choked with unbearable pain. Shen Luo, and was pushed so suddenly that he opened his eyes blankly and looked around. In a daze, he seemed to see a figure holding a bundle of clothes and walking away. Then there was a sound. Chapter 1308. After watching a movie with Oming, they went to have supper. By the time they got home, it was already past 11 p.m. The two of them tiptoed back home, afraid that they would wake up Oh Huajin and his wife. But when he got home, he found that he didn't have his keys with him. Of course, it was impossible for Yu Lily to have a key. For a moment, the two of them couldn't go in, and they didn't dare to ring the doorbell to wake them up. What should we do? Yu Lily looked at him, and felt a little aggrieved. Today is only the first day. What if your mother has a problem with me again, and says that I brought you everywhere? Oming laughed and pinched her nose. How did it become my mother again? My mother is your mother. I won't be so petty. Besides, we just got married. Isn't it normal for newlyweds to go out on a date? Is it normal? Yu Lily thought about it, and felt that it was not appropriate. This was the first time Yu Lily had stayed here. She had been running around on the first day. Yu Lily regretted it and said, "If I had known, I wouldn't have gone out. Why didn't you stop me just now?" Hearing this blame, Oming didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Are you blaming me? It's your fault. It's all your fault. It's all your fault. Yu Lily pushed him away, and looked at the closed door with a bitter face. What should we do? How about we go home? Sho. Listen. Oming pointed at the door. Sure enough, light footsteps could be heard from inside. Then the door opened from the inside. Oh Huijin was in his pajamas. He looked at the couple who had returned home late at night and sighed helplessly. Don't come back so late next time. Your mother is still waiting for you. Yu Lily regretted it even more. She shrank her neck and did not dare to speak. He pulled his wife aside and replied, Got it. It won't be so late next time. Let mom go to bed first. Do you still need to sleep tonight? Xiao Ziqing walked out and looked at the big clock in the living room. She said in a bad mood, It'll take a long time to shower later. Go straight to sleep after you go in. Don't mess around. Get up early tomorrow, you hear? Don't mess around. These words, Lily's face suddenly turned red. He lifted his head to look at Xiao Ziqing and realized that she was looking at him. It was obvious that these words were directed at him. Lily's face became redder, and she nodded. Got it. Xiao Ziqing also knew that girls were shy. Seeing her like this, she waved her hand and said, Go to sleep. Oldo, let's go back too. Yes, I'm coming. Oh, Huijin replied. He closed the door and walked inside. Oming looked at Xiao Ziqing's back and teased. You guys are not allowed to mess around. Hearing this, Xiao Ziqing nearly choked on her saliva. Her face turned red as she coughed. Oh, Huijin was even more direct. He walked over to Oming and knocked him on the head. He warned, Are you tired of living? Oming clutched his head and scrunched up his face. Lily wanted to laugh but didn't dare. She pursed her lips and blushed. Her shoulders trembled slightly as she pulled Oming inside. However, she clearly underestimated Oming's recklessness. Just as they were about to enter the hallway, Oming turned his head and seriously advised, Staying up late is not good for your health. Come earlier tomorrow. Oh, Huijin was even more annoyed. He raised his hand in their direction. Chapter 1309. The next morning, Lily woke up early. It was 6 in the morning. She had just changed into her sportswear when she heard a knock on the door. Xiao Ziqing had already put on her casual and beautiful sportswear. She looked healthy and energetic. When Lily saw Xiao Ziqing in this state, she sighed in her heart. Fortunately, she had this habit. Otherwise, it would have been awkward. Good morning, Mom. Lily smiled naturally. There was no awkwardness in her greeting. When Xiao Ziqing heard that, she looked at her and replied, Hurry up. We have to come back later to make breakfast. Auntie Zhang is off today, so I'm counting on you to make all 3 meals. Lily's smile widened. Not only was there no resentment in her heart, but joy welled up from the bottom of her heart. She nodded her head and said, All right. Seeing that she was willing to work without complaint and happy, made Xiao Ziqing feel much better. But she didn't show it on her face. She turned and ran saying, Let's go. Okay. Lily followed closely behind. Her pace was neither fast nor slow. She kept up with Xiao Ziqing. The villa was located in the suburbs of Kingstown. Most of the people who lived there were the parents of older, wealthier people. Along the way, Xiao Ziqing met many familiar faces and greeted them. Many people's eyes fell on Lily. Anyone who saw her would ask, Who is that? Xiao Ziqing would always smile and say, My Xiao's wife. She didn't say that she was her daughter-in-law. But the neighbors who came and went already knew who Lily was. After running for half an hour, Lily washed her hands and started to make breakfast when she came back. Fortunately, Lily had learned to be self-reliant from a young age. She had a knack for cooking. In about half an hour, breakfast for 4 was ready. When she returned to the room, Oming wasn't in bed. The blankets on the bed were in a mess. It looked like he had just woken up. Lily went forward to touch him. The blankets were still warm. She folded the blankets. Just as she put them down, she heard a slight movement behind her. She could tell that the person behind her had deliberately lightened her footsteps. Lily's lips curled up. She suddenly turned around and shouted, Hey! Oming originally wanted to scare her, but when she suddenly turned around, he was frightened by her. Lily saw that Oming was obviously frightened and laughed out loud. She pointed at him and laughed mercilessly. Are you trying to scare me? Oming gritted his teeth and pushed her onto the bed. He reached out and touched her waist fiercely. With a fierce look he said, You dare to laugh at me? Lily was ticklish, so she felt uncomfortable being scratched by him. She laughed out loud, but at the same time, she couldn't take it anymore. She grabbed his hand and begged, No, who are you talking to? With you, ha ha ha, stop scratching me. I can't take it anymore. Who am I? What should you call me? If you're right, then I won't catch you. Oming's tone contained a hint of a smile, but at the same time, there was a strong sense of threat. Lily understood as soon as she heard that. She curled up and clutched her stomach. She grabbed his hand and begged, Honey, don't. Chapter 1310. They fought a bloody battle. These words, Lily pried his hand away and whispered behind his back, "Be careful not to get sick." Ming had a look of surprise on his face. He turned his head to look at Lily and asked in astonishment, "So you can still get sick like this? I've never heard of it." Lily pushed him. "Now that you've heard, let's go." Ming nodded. He frowned and said seriously, "I heard about it, but I don't believe it. Come on, let's try it." As he spoke, he pushed Lily inside. Lily glared at him and pushed him away forcefully. "Get lost. Mom and Dad are going to look for you later." Ming looked regretful. "Then let's try again tonight." "Try your head." Ha ha ha. By the time Lily and Ming came out, Xiao Ziqing was already halfway through her meal. Huajin was reading the newspaper. In his spare time, he raised his head and looked at them. In a low voice he said, "Time for breakfast. Lily's breakfast is pretty good. Of course, I've been eating her cooking all the time." Ming pulled Lily over to sit down without any hesitation. Wiping his hands with a wet towel, Ming took a bite of his breakfast and ate it with relish. Lily felt a little embarrassed and said, "Thank you, Dad." Huajin put down the newspaper and looked at Lily. "When are you planning to hold the wedding? Seriously, why didn't you tell your family about such a big thing like getting married? How can this girl only have one marriage certificate?" Huajin's words made Lily feel guilty. Xiao Ziqing raised her head and snorted. "Why do you care so much about them? They can do whatever they want." "Soon, I'm already preparing," Ming replied as he ate. Lily heard his words and looked at him in surprise. Ming was already preparing for his wedding. When did that happen? Why didn't she know anything about it? Ming acted as if he hadn't noticed Lily's gaze and continued. "As for the guest list, we'll need you and me to help us check it out. When the time comes, we'll need you and me to decide who to invite. You know more than we do, don't you, Mom?" Xiao Ziqing enjoyed his flattery very much. Xiao Ziqing glanced at her son and harumphed. "Now you remember your parents. When you went to Fujian to please your wife, you didn't even think about us." Lily was even more embarrassed. As the person involved, it was a little embarrassing to be called out like that. With a look of disapproval he said, "Mom, what you said is wrong. What are we? We're family. We've known each other for more than 30 years. Who are we? But if you don't get your wife back, how are you going to have grandchildren in the future? Without grandchildren, what will you do in the future? I'm doing this for the sake of your old age." Lily almost slapped him. "Did you want a child just to fool your parents?" Huajin was speechless. Xiao Ziqing glared at him and said, "What a glib tongue." Ming reached under the table and gently placed his hand on Lily's. He said proudly, "If you don't have a glib tongue, how can you coax your wife?" As he spoke, he raised his eyebrows and looked at Lily with a bright smile. Chapter 13:11. Ming put his hand on hers again, but it was quickly pushed away by Lily. He put his hand on hers again, and it was pushed away again and again. The two of them had fun. Xiao Ziqing was a little bored. She shook her head and said, "You two are so dramatic." Lily couldn't help but laugh. She turned her head and found that Ming was also smiling. That was great. Everything was as happy as she had imagined. That was great. A month was enough to change a lot of things. It was said that it took 100 days to recover from an injury. Yi finally got discharged on the 30th day of lying in the hospital. During those 30 days, Shen Luoan didn't come, but Shen Julia came very frequently. After Yi's mother got divorced, she married a rich businessman in the capital. Yi had grown up in the capital. After making money, she bought a house in the suburbs of the capital. She said she was going home to recuperate, which meant she was going back to the capital. Yi Qianqian had to go to work, so she had already returned to Kingstown. On that day, Shen Julia sent Yi back to the capital. When he saw the car of the Shen family's driver, he naturally pulled Yi's luggage toward the car. When Yi saw that, she immediately took the luggage from his hand. Shen Julia turned his head in surprise and asked, "What's wrong, sister-in-law?" Sister-in-law. Being in the capital, stepping on the land under her feet. Yi felt it was very ironic when she heard that title. "You can go back by yourself. I can go back by myself." Yi's smile was light. but it was obvious that she was estranged. Yi Yu had been like that for a long time. Shenjilia was more or less used to it, but at this moment, when he heard Yi Yu's words, he still felt a little distressed. Looking at the girl in front of him who was a little younger than him, he comforted her and said, "Sister-in-law, let's go home together. After all, you are my sister-in-law, and the Shen family is your home." Yi Yu heard that and shook her head. "Thank you, uncle. It's been hard on you these days, but I still need some time to prepare." "Prepare?" Shenjilia had already guessed something. "Prepare for what?" "I asked for this marriage. I am very grateful to Shen Luoan. He made my dream come true. He had also personally extinguished all her hopes and all her light. I will divorce him. I hope we can still be friends in the future." Yi Yu's smile was light, but when combined with her pale complexion, it was like a blooming epiphyllum in the night. It was beautiful, but it could dissipate at any moment. Shenjilia could clearly feel an indescribable pain in his heart. He looked at her and opened his mouth, but in the end, not a single word came out. Yi Yu picked up her luggage, turned around, and headed for the taxi lane. Shenjilia stared at her from behind. He couldn't help but take a big step forward and block her way. He said, "Let me take you back. It's not easy to hail a cab at this hour, and I happen to be starving. Let's have dinner together, and then I'll take you back." When Yi Yu heard that, she saw the pure and sincere expression on his face. She nodded her head and said, "Thank you." "Hey, why are you thanking me? Yi Yu, get in the car." When Yi Yu heard her name coming from Shenjilia's mouth, she was stunned for a moment. Chapter 13:12. The boundless downpour washed over the entire mountain and plains. In the middle of the night, it was so dark that one couldn't even see their own fingers. Other than the feeble cries of the girls, the only sound that could be heard was the pitter-patter of the rain. No one could foresee when the rain would stop, and no one could foresee when they would be able to escape from their predicament. They stayed in the cave for a full 5 to 6 hours. The rain grew heavier and heavier. The mud and rocks were washed away by the rain. They were sticky and turbulent. The cave was quickly submerged by the mud and rocks. Layer after layer of despair engulfed everyone. It wasn't clear who started it, but more than a dozen teenage boys and girls started to cry out weakly. The 18-year-old Shen Luo appeared mature and steady among the group of youths. He led his companions in an orderly escape, but a scream came from the back of the group. When his companions turned their heads, they saw that 2 people were missing: Yi Yu and her injured stepsister Guan Kui. The sudden disappearance of the 2 girls undoubtedly brought unspeakable panic to the group of youths. Everyone was in a mess. It was so chaotic that even Shen Luo didn't know what had happened. The mudslide was getting bigger and bigger, but the 2 girls were nowhere to be found. Later, when the rescue team arrived, Shen Luo frantically searched for them. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't find any news of them. Just as Shen Luo was about to give up, he suddenly heard a weak voice. "Luoan." Luoan, and the voice was hoarse, and it wasn't as gentle and moving as it used to be. Shen Luoan turned his head and was met with a pair of bloodshot eyes. That pair of eyes pierced through his eyes and shook his soul. Shen Luoan instinctively took a step back. The ground beneath his feet was empty, and he felt as if he had fallen into an abyss. With a sudden thump, his heart felt like it was being pulled by someone. When he opened his eyes, it was still pitch black. The air was clean. The room was clean. The environment was clean. Shen Luo was stunned for a long time before he let out a long sigh. He reached up and touched his forehead. Cold sweat was dripping. He got up and dragged his slippers into the kitchen. He poured himself a cup of warm water and drank it in one gulp. "Brother." Shen Luo was caught off guard by the sudden male voice. His heart skipped a beat. She turned her head and saw Shenjilia sitting on the sofa with a cell phone in his hand and several beer cans in front of him. Shen Luo breathed a sigh of relief. He walked over to him and sat down beside him. "When did you get here?" Shen Luo asked tiredly as he put down the cup. The lights in the living room were off, and the surroundings were pitch black. It was normal for Shen Luo to not notice Shenjilia sitting there quietly. Unfortunately, Shenjilia was sitting on the sofa playing with his phone. The brightness on his phone was quite high. With one look, she could tell that Shen Luo was not in his right mind. Shenjilia opened a bottle of beer and handed it over. "Did you have another nightmare?" Shen Luo took it but didn't drink it. He let out a long sigh and leaned against the sofa as he stared at the dark ceiling. "Jilia, do you think there are ghosts in this world?" Shenjilia pouted and shook his head. "I've never believed in such things." "Do you believe in God?" "I don't believe you." "Then do you believe in retribution?" "I don't believe you," Shenjilia said. Chapter 13:13. Shen Luo looked away and slowly fell on the beer can in front of him. He slowly said, "But some people deserve retribution." Shenjilia heard that and frowned. He picked up the beer can in front of him and took a sip. He changed the topic. "Sister-in-law was discharged from the hospital today. I brought her back to the capital." "Well, what about now?" Shen Luo asked casually. He didn't seem to care at all. "Now she has gone back to her own house. She doesn't want to come back with me." He looked at Shen Luo and said disapprovingly, "During this period of time, only my parents and I visited her. As her husband, you didn't even give her a call." "Brother, it's not just them who think you're going overboard. Even as her younger brother, I think you shouldn't have done this." Shen Luo looked at Shen Luo. When Shen Luo heard that, he turned his head and looked at Shenjilia with a faint smile. When Shenjilia caught Yi Yu's gaze, he felt even angrier. He said, "Brother, I don't know what's going on between you and sister-in-law, but I think that if there's any misunderstanding between you, it's better to clear things up. Yi Yu really likes you. Otherwise, she wouldn't want to marry you so much. She has always wanted to marry me." Shen Luo casually shook the beer bottle. "Didn't I fulfill her wish?" Shenjilia was speechless. He looked at him angrily and shook his head. "Look at you now. Do you have any sense of responsibility as a husband? No. You are simply wasting her youth. Brother, you can't treat a girl like this." Shen Luo slammed the beer bottle on the table. He immediately stood up and said casually, "If you are going to lecture me, then you can shut up. I don't want to hear it." As he spoke, he had already started walking. However, after a moment, he seemed to have thought of something and stopped. "I'll go see her tomorrow. As for the responsibilities of a husband, perhaps you can come with me and teach me how to fulfill my responsibilities." Shenjilia was infuriated by his attitude. He felt more and more sorry for Yi Yu. He looked at Shen Luo's back and snorted. "Divorcing you was the right decision. Yi Yu was such a good girl." Shen Luo stopped in his tracks. "What do you mean?" When Shenjilia saw that Yi Yu was finally reacting, he felt strangely at ease. In a menacing voice he said, "Actually, when I just got off the plane today, I wanted to bring her home. But Yi Yu refused to come. She's already making preparations. She might divorce you at any time." Shen Luo stood with his back to Shenjilia and said nothing. Shenjilia stared at his back and enunciated each word clearly. "You don't cherish it anyway. It's better for you to get a divorce." In the depths of Shen Luo's eyes, there seemed to be a violent storm that could not be calmed. However, he didn't say anything else. He strode forward. Shenjilia didn't know if he had done the right thing, but Shen Luo's attitude was far beyond his expectations. If he had a reaction, it meant that he cared. Since he cared about Yi Yu, why did he have to provoke Shen Manting? Shenjilia was getting more and more confused. The elder brother he had once respected the most had changed. Yi Yu didn't tell anyone about her return to the capital. Their old friends had also slowly drifted apart because they hadn't been in contact for too long. Chapter 13:14. Fortunately, Yi Yu didn't have the habit of sleeping naked at home or sleeping in only her underwear. She was dressed in loose, casual home clothes, which were still presentable enough to meet people. Yi Yu looked in the mirror. When she saw that she wasn't too pale, she walked over and opened the door. When she opened the door and saw the face that she hadn't seen in a long time, Yi Yu froze. The man in front of her was young and calm. His figure was tall and straight like a pine tree, and he was handsome and awe-inspiring. He looked to be in his 20s or 30s, but he had a unique aura of pride. His temperament was like a cool breeze. It was unforgettable. Why are you here? Yi Yu's voice was a little high. Her tone was full of disbelief. Li Jinnan's gaze fell behind her. He looked around without any expression. He raised his eyebrows slightly and asked, "Aren't you going to invite me in?" Yi Yu looked at him in disbelief. She looked at the clock behind her. It was past 9 in the morning. Isn't this a little too early? Before Yi Yu could reply, Li Jinnan had already walked in through the gap beside her. His demeanor showed that he didn't feel that there was anything wrong with his behavior. Yi Yu had just finished her breakfast. She had made a sandwich with milk. She had drunk half of the milk, and there was still some left in the sandwich. The house was very clean, and the decor was very nice. The overall feeling gave off a youthful vibe. However, it also seemed that he hadn't bothered with her for a long time. Or perhaps the owner's style was slowly changing. It gave off a casual and carefree feeling. The environment is not bad. Li Jinnan looked around and nodded his head. He looked as if he had come down from the countryside to do some research. Yi Yu quickly walked in and stood in front of Li Jinnan. She asked, "GM Li, why are you here? Also, how did you know about this place?" Li Jinnan received these questions in a row and turned his head to look at her. His dark eyes were as calm as the moon. They were gentle, but filled with coldness. One look at them gave off an indescribable sense of depth. "I came to the capital on a business trip. I heard that you were here, so I dropped by." As he spoke, his gaze fell on Yi Yu's injured arm. "It looks like you're recovering well. Who did you hear that from? Not many people know that I live here." There was no way Yi Qianqian would tell him. After all, Yi Qianqian had nothing to do with that man. While Yi Yu was puzzled, a light suddenly flashed in her mind. She asked, "Mira said that?" Li Jinnan glanced at her, then looked at his wristwatch and said, "My flight is at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Let's have dinner together. I haven't had breakfast yet. Let's go out and eat." He didn't answer Yi Yu directly. Instead, he changed the subject. However, such an attitude was tantamount to tacit approval. Yi Yu was a little annoyed. She looked at Li Jinnan, and the weird feeling in her heart intensified. After considering her words, she said, "GM Li, why are you so nice to me? If it's because of what happened that night, I hope you won't take it to heart. After all, we're both adults. You're so outstanding, and you're more suited for a better girl. I'm already married." Chapter 13-15. Faced with Li Jinnan's gaze, Yi Yu felt a little uncomfortable. Yi Yu stood rooted to the ground and swallowed hard. Li Jinnan took a step forward. When Yi Yu saw that, she instinctively took a step back. Seeing that, Li Jinnan stopped in his tracks. Looking at the woman in front of him, he laughed and said, "Miss Yi, as your boss, I feel that it is my duty to be responsible for you. Also my interest in married women." His gaze swept over Yi Yu. When he saw Yi Yu's slightly pale face, he clicked his tongue and shook his head. What he meant couldn't be more clear. Although this was what Yi Yu had hoped for, to have Li Jinnan express it so openly was a little embarrassing for Yi Yu. "Thank you, GM Li." Yi Yu smiled. "Thanks to you, my health has improved a lot. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to participate in such a popular TV series. It's my fault that I didn't cherish the opportunity. However, I still hope that GM Li won't abandon me. I want to continue to develop in the entertainment industry." If she wanted to be successful, if she wanted to stand out, that was the only way. Her mother wouldn't give her a good life, and the Shin family wouldn't give her happiness. Now, Yi Yu could only rely on herself. Li Jinnan turned his face. His sharp eyebrows were slightly raised. His eyes, which were like the deep moon, were even deeper and more intense than before. After staring at Yi Yu for about 2 seconds, Li Jinnan looked away and slowly said, "Since you are already mine, I will not mistreat you." When Yi Yu heard that, her heart skipped a beat. Inexplicably, she felt that there was some ambiguity in his words. "Since I am mine, I will not mistreat me." What does that mean? Is he saying that Yi Yu is a part of his company, or does he mean something else? Yi Yu's heart was in turmoil. She couldn't figure out what that man meant. She looked at Li Jinnan and was about to speak, But he continued without changing his expression. However, Yi Yu swallowed the words that had been on the tip of her tongue when she saw his expression, which couldn't have been any more natural. But Yi Yu looked at him and waited for him to continue. Li Jinnan turned around and slowly said, "Opportunities are for those who are prepared. Luck is possible, but strength is the most important factor that determines success. Instead of worrying about being abandoned, it's better to work hard to improve yourself, so that it's hard for others to give you up." Yi Yu didn't reply. She merely nodded her head. Li Jinnan looked at her deeply for a moment before walking toward the door. As he walked, he seemed to be explaining and bidding farewell. "You have great potential, so I can't let you waste it. Since I know that you're fine, I'm leaving too. Rest well. When you're fully recovered, tell Mira to inform me." His words put Yi Yu's mind at ease. Asking Mila to inform him meant that he wasn't paying attention to her all the time, and didn't know when she could recover. When Yi Yu heard the hidden meaning in his words, she felt at ease. "Okay, take care, President Li." Li Jinnan could hear the relief in her voice. His jaw tightened a little, but he didn't say a word as he strode forward. Yi Yu's apartment was in a middle-class neighborhood. There were people who could drive luxury cars, but there weren't many. A black Bentley stretch limousine caught Shen Luo'an's eye. The license plate was A16888. This car belonged to the Yuo Group. Chapter 13-16. However, the Yuo Group had always been aloof. Someone who could use such a high-end car, regardless of whether it was a VIP or one of their own, had to be very important. Shen Luo'an parked the car. When he walked out, he caught a glimpse of a familiar figure. The figure was standing straight. When he walked, he had a natural elegance and calmness. One look, and you could tell that he was from an extraordinary family. Looking at his face, he looked similar to the famous Li Xiqing in Kingstown. However, this man looked tougher and sharper. Li Jinnan. In the past few years, he had risen to fame, and had everything going smoothly for him. He was ranked #1 on the list of the richest men that women wanted to marry. He was also the CEO of the company that Yi Yu had signed with. However, this young CEO wasn't that approachable. She had never heard of him having any scandals. Now why would he come to such a place for an unknown star? Seeing Li Jinnan appear, Shen Luo'an seemed to understand something. Standing in the same place, Shen Luo'an kept his eyes on Li Jinnan. Following his footsteps, he walked forward. Li Jinnan had already noticed the pair of eyes. When he turned his head, he could only see a withered branch covering the figure's face. There was no gap. For a moment, Li Jinnan didn't know who he was. Not caring, Li Jinnan went to the back seat and let the driver take him to the destination. Seeing the black Bentley leave, Shen Luo'an's face became darker and darker. The anger that had been buried deep in his heart for a long time suddenly came out, and it couldn't be controlled. He strode in and quickly got into the elevator. Yi Yu had just cleaned up the cutlery when the doorbell rang again. Hearing the doorbell, Yi Yu's first reaction was that Li Jinnan was back. After washing her hands, she took off her high ponytail and combed her hair with her fingers. Then, she walked up to open the door and said, "GM Lian." Li Xiqing was stunned. When she saw the obviously gloomy and angry face in front of her, Yi Yu stopped talking. Shen Luo'an saw Yi Yu's reaction and sneered. "What? Are you disappointed to see that it's not your GM Li?" Yi Yu gazed at him. Her heart, which had been calm for a long time, suddenly began to throb with pain. In the face of Shen Luo'an's mocking and disdainful gaze, she felt as if thousands of arrows had pierced through her heart. It was so painful that she didn't even dare to breathe. She pursed her lips and looked at her husband. After a long time, she asked, "Why are you here?" Shen Luo'an's face was gloomy, and he had no intention of answering. He pushed the door open and walked in without saying anything. Yi Yu froze at the door. She opened her mouth to stop him, but she quickly remembered something else. After closing the door, she turned to look at him and asked, "What would you like to drink?" Shen Luo'an didn't answer. He turned his head and looked at her coldly. He smiled coldly and said, "I didn't expect you to be so capable. Why? Is it because I won't touch you that anyone can have sex with you? The words of mockery and disdain were like a sharp sickle, heavily and ruthlessly sawing at her heart. Chapter 13:17. It was as if her question was a joke. Shin Luoan chuckled and took a step forward without warning. His sudden approach caught Yi Yu off guard. She instinctively took a step back. Before Yi Yu could react, Shin Luoan's hand reached forward. Yi Yu's hand was gripped so tightly that it hurt. Shin Luoan's eyes were fierce. He clenched his teeth and sneered. He held her hand and leaned in. He enunciated each word clearly. You don't have to pretend in front of me. Your nature can fool everyone, but not me. Yi Yu's eyebrows knitted together in a frown. Anger swept over her as well. She looked up at the man she had loved for more than a decade, the husband she had hated for a long time. Yi Yu's breathing became more and more rapid. His hand that was being grabbed struggled for a moment, but then it was forcefully dragged away. He couldn't fight back at all. The pain in her hand made Yi Yu's eyes turn red, and tears welled up in them. In Shen Luoan's eyes, it was no different from an act. He looked coldly at his so-called wife in front of him. His eyes were filled with disgust. Why? Are you wronged? Or do you think that I will forgive you like I did in the past, if you put on such an expression? Yi Yu, aren't you too naive? Yi Yu clenched her teeth and didn't say a word. Her face turned paler and paler, and her breathing became heavier. Her eyes became moist and she cried out in pain. It hurts. Shen Luoan squinted his eyes and looked at her hand suspiciously. The skin that was exposed from the cuff of her sleeve was already red. It looked like the injury wasn't light. At the same time, Shen Luoan remembered the reason Yi Yu had been hospitalized. Shocked, Shen Luoan immediately let go of her hand. Yi Yu's hands had been tensed up the entire time. She wasn't the least bit prepared for the sudden release. The sudden release of his grip caused him to stumble backward. Her back hit the chair behind her. Yi Yu's eyes were red as she inhaled. She swallowed her saliva. She felt a lump in her throat. She pulled up the sleeves of her pajamas, revealing the bruised skin underneath. When Shen Luoan saw her hand, his heart was filled with complicated emotions. His eyes were filled with regret, shock, and worry. He took a step forward and reached his hand out. He wanted to grab Yi Yu's arm to examine it, but she quickly dodged his hand. Yi Yu looked at her husband in front of her vigilantly, and with a complicated expression. She said sadly, Shen Luoan, let's get a divorce. Divorce? As early as last night, Shen Luoan had already expected this. When he arrived, he was already mentally prepared. But hearing it with his own ears, Shen Luoan was still a little shocked. This woman actually wanted to divorce him? Marrying him had been her dream all these years, hadn't it? Now she actually told him in front of him that she wanted a divorce. Shen Luoan couldn't describe what he was feeling at the bottom of his heart. Soreness, pain, numbness, anger, jealousy, hatred. Chapter 13:18. His words were harsh to the ears. Especially for a woman, being scolded as a used shoe was something that no one could accept. Shen Luoan, don't think of everyone as filthy as you. He's my boss. He's different from an animal like you, who wouldn't even let go of your own sister. Yi Yu endured the pain in her arm and yelled angrily. The expression on Shen Luoan's face darkened. If I'm an animal, then what are you, the one who chases after animals? You're the one who sought death to marry an animal. You're despicable beyond redemption. Despicable? Yi Yu had never been eloquent. When she was scolded in such a manner, the anger in her heart surged. She could only retort angrily and roar. You're the despicable one. That retort triggered Shen Luoan's deep-rooted bad habits. With a cold laugh, he closed in on her and enunciated each word clearly. If you weren't despicable, why would you cry and beg to marry me? If you weren't despicable, why would you shamelessly stay in a household where everyone despised you for so long? Do you know how much Uncle Guan regretted it after your mother married him? Especially after what happened to Guan Kuei. Did you think that when Uncle Guan said he didn't blame you, he really didn't? Guan Kuei, the name that had been sealed away for a long time, was suddenly mentioned without warning. The scar that had been buried deep in Yi Yu's heart for a long time was suddenly torn open. Yi Yu's expression changed in an instant. Shen Luo, and found Yi Yu's expression to be extremely piercing. The coldness on his face gradually faded, and his lips curled into a slightly cruel smile. After so many years, even if it was just a little, have you ever felt the slightest bit of regret? His words sounded like a question, but at the same time, like he was talking to himself. Just as Yi Yu was about to answer, Shen Luo interrupted her and said, "You haven't. Brother Luoan." The pain in Yi Yu's arm intensified, but the bitterness in her heart didn't lessen. "You know this has nothing to do with me. You know it." "I know. I've always known that you're jealous of her. You're jealous of her family background, her personality, and her popularity." As he spoke, his eyes stared straight at Yi Yu. His smile grew crueler, wider and colder. There was no warmth in it. "Sometimes, I really wish that she wasn't so outstanding. Even if she was just a little bit worse than you, she wouldn't have been harmed by you like that." "It wasn't me. Shen Luoan, are you crazy? You know it wasn't me." Yi Yu's face was turning paler and paler. Large beads of sweat were forming on her forehead. She looked like she was on the verge of collapsing. "She's my sister." Shen Luoan sneered as if he had heard something ridiculous. "Your sister? Someone like Yi Qianqian is your sister." Her gaze was full of pity and sorrow. "As for Guan Kui, when did you ever treat her as your sister? All I see is that she's devoted to you, but you're trying your best to steal the man she likes." Yi Yu's face paled, and her breathing quickened. Chapter 13:19. The pain in Yi Yu's hand was getting worse and worse. Her heart was getting worse and worse. "You hate me." Yi Yu's voice was choked with guilt. Shen Luoan smiled and shook his head gently. "You think too highly of yourself. Only when there's love can there be hate. I just hate you." These words were like a spear that suddenly and fiercely pierced through her. In an instant, fresh blood sprayed out, and it was a horrible sight to behold. Yi Yu looked up at him. She frowned and smiled sadly. "Then why did you marry me?" "Everyone wanted me to marry you, so I did." "You were happy, weren't you?" Shen Luoan's slightly rough palm had the smell of disinfectant, because it had been in contact with all kinds of drugs for years. It was neither strong nor weak. In the past, Yi Yu had loved this smell. It was a smell that belonged to Shen Luoan. It was special and unique. At some point, this smell had gradually drifted away from her. It had become unfamiliar. Yi Yu sniffed it greedily. The bitterness in her heart overflowed to her eyes. Shen Luoan could clearly sense Yi Yu's mood swings. The pleasure of revenge that he had imagined was nowhere to be found. Looking at the woman in front of him, whose face was filled with disappointment, Shen Luoan's heart ached. He hadn't felt this way in a long time. After all, she was someone he had known for more than a decade. No matter how heartless he was, he couldn't compare to a fraction of this woman. But Shen Luoan stroked her chin with his palm. His movement was heavy and slow. "Even though I hate you so much, I can't bear to divorce you. What do you think I should do?" Tears welled up in her eyes, but she held them back. They didn't fall. Yi Yu's expression was one of forbearance and stubbornness. She reached out and smacked his hand. Slap. Shen Luoan's hand fell. Very quickly, the man's eyes turned cold again. The smile on his face widened. It was cruel and merciless. "For so long, we've been husband and wife in name, but not in reality. Why don't we?" He didn't have to finish his sentence. Yi Yu was already panicking. Taking a step back, Yi Yu looked at the man in front of her who obviously didn't love her. She yelled, "What do you want?" Shen Luoan didn't answer. Instead, he tugged her forcefully with his large hand and dragged her to the sofa. Yi Yu's heart ached. She struggled violently and shouted, "Shen Luoan, let me go." "Let go." He gritted his teeth and sneered, "Stop pretending. You love me so much, so you must desire me. I'm not in a good mood today and I need to vent. Next time, there won't be such a good opportunity." These words made it seem as if his current actions were charity, as if he was bestowing a gift upon them. The excruciating pain from her arm nearly caused her to collapse. Tears gushed out of her eyes. She couldn't tell if they were tears of pain, fear, or both. Shen Luo lowered his head, and used his mouth to bite on the button of her pajamas. He pulled it open forcefully. Her pajamas opened up, revealing her black bra. Her snow-white skin was especially eye-catching against the extreme darkness. The look in Shen Luo's eyes deepened, and his throat tightened. The longing in his heart suddenly surged. Chapter 13:20. He used his chin to open her collar, and his lips landed on her delicate skin. Her skin was young and supple. Even Shen Luo hadn't expected that his desire, which had always been difficult to arouse, would burst forth like water from a broken dam. It couldn't be stopped. Yi Yi's unease grew, and she struggled more frequently. The pain in her hand prevented her from using too much force. Shen Luo's lips began to sweep across her skin. The unfamiliar sensation, the touch that she had never experienced before, made Yi Yu unable to hold it in any longer. She broke down and began to cry. Her body, which had been writhing and struggling, stopped. She yelled, "It hurts! My hand!" The sudden cry froze Shen Luo on the spot. He had already forgotten about her injury, but it came back to him again. He immediately let go of her hand. Yi Yu hugged her hand and cried unabashedly. Her palm-sized face turned red, and tears streamed down her cheeks. The sound of her breaking down was touching. Her hand, which had already been red a moment ago, was now bruised and swollen. It looked particularly hideous. Shen Luo was shocked. He instinctively went forward to help her up and said, "How did this happen? Let's go. I'll take you to the hospital." Yi Yu wailed loudly. He didn't know if it was because of the grievance, the pain, or both. When Shen Luo carried her, Yi Yu held her injured arm and didn't struggle. One of the buttons on Yi Yu's pajamas had been pulled open, and a large area of her chest was revealed. Her snow-white skin and the moderate cleavage were delicate and exquisite. They were faintly discernible under the high-quality material. It was hard not to take a second look at such a scene. It was precisely because of those two looks that Shen Luo's originally hard-to-arouse response became even more rampant. He reached out and pulled her clothes up. In a hoarse voice he said, "Put on your clothes." Yi Yu cried even more fiercely. She hugged her arm and clutched her collar as she sobbed. Shen Luo's brows were tightly knitted together. He quickly carried her to the elevator. When they reached the hospital, it was confirmed that the wound had relapsed. When Yi Yu came out of the hospital, Shen Luo was long gone. He had expected it. When Yi Yu heard that, she felt both relieved and disappointed. Ignoring the doctor's suggestion that she stay in the hospital for observation, Yi Yu insisted on being discharged. Just as she was about to leave, the nurse reminded her, "Miss, please go to the first floor to pay the bill." He didn't even pay the fee. Yi Yu held the bill in her hand. She didn't feel good about it. She picked up a pair of slippers from the hospital and walked out in her pajamas. By the time she got a cab home, it was already afternoon. Yi Yu was very hungry, and her hand had been bandaged up again. There was no way she could cook anything on her own, so she picked up her phone and ordered takeout. After eating, Yi Yu made sure that all the doors were locked before she lay down and went to sleep. Tired, after Guan Kui's incident, she moved out of her stepfather's house. After living here for so many years, he had gotten used to it. He was so used to it that even though he hadn't seen his mother for a long time, he didn't feel anything. During the month she was hospitalized, her biological mother only visited her once. That time, he only sat for 10 minutes before rushing back to the imperial capital. No matter how brave Yi Yu was, she would never have imagined that her mother, whom she rarely saw, would come looking for her at the small house she lived in. Chapter 13:21. When Yi Yu opened the door, she was shocked to see them. One of them was a well-maintained noblewoman, and the other was a middle-aged man who looked scholarly. Yi Tian hadn't seen her daughter in a long time. When she saw Yi Yu's pale face, her gaze slowly moved down. When she saw that Yi Yu's pajamas were missing a button, she frowned and said, "Why are you dressed like that? Hurry up and get changed." Yi Yu looked down at herself. She hadn't exposed herself or exposed anything. It was just a set of pajamas. If I don't dress like this in my own home, What else should I dress like? Mrs. Guan. Yi Yu looked at them and spoke to her mother with a hint of mockery in her voice. Don't listen to your mother. You should be more casual at home, the man beside Yi Tian said. Yi Yu looked at him. Her heart felt empty and guilty. She turned to the side and said, Uncle, come in. Guan Yanhong smiled and nodded his head. He pulled Yi Tian in and sat on the sofa. Yi Yu got them the only drink she had, mineral water. She poured them a glass of water in plastic cups before sitting on the sofa opposite them and asking, Why were you looking for me? Both of them were busy people. They wouldn't have come to me for no reason. However, it couldn't have been a small matter if the two of them had been called out. Yi Yu was a little reserved. She kept an eye on her clothes. Her hand was still hurting. It would be troublesome to change her clothes. She couldn't afford to waste any more time with these two people. Yu, you're 26 years old this year. You're a big girl now. I heard that you were discharged from the hospital. I wanted to visit you today, but when we arrived at the Shun residence, we heard that you were still staying here. Did you get into an argument with Shun Luoan? Guan Yanhong's voice was filled with concern. His eyes beneath his gold-rimmed glasses had a unique charm to them. When she heard that, Yi Yu was reminded of Shun Luoan's behavior that morning. She shook her head and lied. No, I'm just staying here temporarily. I see. Guan Yanhong nodded his head and replied, That's good. I was really afraid that the two of you would get into a fight. But you have to go back soon. Don't stay here alone. You're a girl with a family. At least you'll have people to look after you. Got it, Uncle. Yi Yu smiled. She was polite but distant. Thank you, Uncle. Guan Yanhong smiled kindly, but there was no other expression on his face. Yi Tian opened her mouth and said, Yu, the reason we're here this time isn't just to see you. We also have a favor to ask of you. Yi Yu looked up at her mother and asked, What is it? Well, Yi Tian found it difficult to speak. She instinctively turned her head to look at Guan Yanhong. Guan Yanhong gave her a look of encouragement and placed his hand gently on the back of her hand. Yi Tian asked, You've been married to Luoan for so long. Don't you plan to have children? To have children? Yi Yu felt a sharp pain in her heart. Were they going to have a child? The image of Shun Luoan's hideous expression surfaced in her mind. She pursed her lips and gently shook her head. No. When Yi Tian heard that, she deliberated over her words and said, I know that you must want to prioritize your career. That's why I'm here to ask a favor of you. Since you and Shun Luoan are husband and wife, I'd like to ask for something from you. What is it? Shun Luoan's semen. Dash. Chapter 1322. Yi Yu had never imagined that Yi Tian would make such a request. Isn't that a little too much? Yi Yu's first reaction was to think that Yi Tian was joking. She scrutinized Yi Tian's face for a long time, but she couldn't detect any hint of a joke. Yi Tian said, Yu, Kei's condition has improved a lot recently. You know that if Kei hadn't gotten into trouble, you wouldn't have been the one marrying Shun Luoan. So, Mom. Yi Yu interrupted Yi Tian. You don't have to remind me about that. Furthermore, you shouldn't have asked me for this. I think it would be better if you asked Shun Luoan directly. Yi Tian wanted to, but Shun Luoan's temper was too eccentric and extreme. Furthermore, he had always been slightly paranoid. If Yi Tian asked for it herself, Shun Luoan might not give her face. But Yi Yu was Shun Luoan's wife after all. She wouldn't do anything to him. Yi Tian's mind was filled with wishful thinking. She looked at Yi Yu and said, You know Shun Luoan's temper. Is this your idea, Uncle? Yi Yu looked at Guan Yanhong and asked, How is sister's condition? I haven't visited her in a long time. Guan Yanhong's expression didn't change in the slightest. In the face of Yi Yu's obviously meaningful words, he nodded his head and replied, You've been busy for the past year, and haven't had the time to visit her. But Kei's condition has improved a lot recently. If you have the time, we can arrange a time to go together. Her condition is better because I haven't visited her, right? When Yi Yu heard that, she understood Guan Yanhong's meaning. But she pretended not to understand. She smiled and nodded her head. Sure, Uncle. Call me when you have the time. But I can't give you the item that you want from Shin Luoan. After all, no normal person would keep something like that, right? I'm afraid I won't be able to help you. I'm sorry. Perhaps I can pass on a message and get Shin Luo and to deliver it to you personally? Guan Yanhong's brows knitted together. He was clearly dissatisfied with Yi Yu's words. Normal people wouldn't stay. In other words, he was indirectly saying that they were abnormal? Should I tell Shin Luo and to deliver it to them himself? What a joke. How could Shin Luo possibly care about them? Yi Yu, how can you speak to your uncle like that? Yi Tian's brows were tightly furrowed as she lectured Yu Yu. When Yi Yu heard that, she laughed and replied, Am I wrong? Or is there something I said that you are not satisfied with? Please point it out, and I will correct it. Yi Tian was at a loss for words. She didn't know what to say. Yi Yu stood up, waved her hand and said, My hand is injured. I just took the medicine, and I'm a little sleepy. If there's nothing else, I'll go to bed. Yi Yu closed her eyes in exhaustion. The effects of the drug are too strong. I can't even keep my eyes open. There's food and drinks in the fridge. Help yourselves. As he spoke, he really walked inside without turning back at all. Yi Tian hadn't expected Yi Yu to be so disrespectful. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.